Today we've got a really special treat for you. We're here with Sezin Nadaway, and we're going to be doing something that I absolutely love. We're cooking in the bush. We're at Sezin's home. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Welcome.
Tell us what we're doing today.
Okay, so today we're going to make venison stew a la outdoor.
A la outdoors.
A la outdoors.
I like a la outdoors.
And we have our root vegetables here.
Okay.
We have our deer meat right here. Very simple. And also we have two special little ingredients.
Ooh.
Foraged from today.
You went out and picked that right back there.
Right behind my backyard, like right here.
And you took it home and you gave it some absolute love. And did you pickle these?
Yes,
So they're going to be slightly pickled.
slightly.
Oh, I caught that. Did you see that? My arm
It
is
doesn't want
trained.
you to eat it. Here,
Big crunch.
give me one of those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Delicious, fresh. I love it.
Fragrant.
So that came from your land, and
This special guy right here.
oh,
Maple syrup, foraged, produced, tapped from the trees around here. This is maple syrup, boiled right here.
I can't lie. When I first got here, Sezin knows my love for maple syrup, and she goes, "Do you want to do a morning shot?" We did a morning shot of maple syrup. I'm telling you, I've had maple syrup around the world, and it's got a body to it and a flavor that it's purely you. You know, when I taste your food, it's always rich and delicious and full of flavor, and it's exemplified by this little bottle of golden nectar. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you use this in this.
Awesome.
So
Well,
let's get into it.
let's get started.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start off by heating some butter.
Okay.
You wanna grab that because
Yep.
we're gonna bring that over.
Yep,
So we've heated up our cast iron.
sure.
We need it nice and hot.
Yep.
Give me a second. Ooh, she's perfectly nice and hot. So we just want to melt our butter.
Okay.
You can use any kind of fats you wish. You can use olive oil, you can use vegetable oil, canola oil, any kind of oil. I like to use butter.
No, butter is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It tastes great.
Yep.
There's nothing like the taste of really great butter.
Yep.
Do you make your own butter here too, Sezin?
No. Yes, I do with my cows.
There we go.
In the
They're-
bush.
They're in the bush. Bush cows.
Bush cows.
Bush cows.
So here we've melted our fats. You can see it's starting to turn a little brown.
Yep.
We can throw in our meat now.
Okay.
So that's the sound that you want to hear.
That sizzle, that instant bang.
Sizzle.
Yeah.
So here we go. And while my meat's browning, I'm going to throw in some of that wild garlic that we picked.
Okay.
So hand me over the wild garlic.
Yes, ma'am. There you go, chef.
Thank you. I'm going to leave these whole
Right.
just because, you know,
It's nice. You get a nice big, crunch of something.
yes.
And also, when you're eating it, you like to see what you're eating. Like you know
Exactly.
that's going to be wild garlic.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. You went through all that trouble of going out to the bush, I'm sure 30 paces that way, and picking all this up. So,
I don't want to start chopping it up unless it's for like a fine cuisine. Then I'll cut it
make
up
it a little
bit
pretty
more.
But this is very rustic. This is home style cooking. This is what you were raised with. This is
Yeah.
what you do.
Big
And
chunks.
Absolutely. This is just boom,
Chunky like me.
giddy up. Makes two of us. The chunky stew. It's all good. So
Awesome.
we're gonna brown up the meat.
Yes.
And that'll take 5-10 minutes.
Yep.
And what else is going to be going in this aside from the meat and the root vegetables? I see this pot right here, and this has got me a little intrigued.
You're gonna be intrigued for a little bit longer.
Okay.
I'll just leave that there for a bit.
You're not sharing anything until it's time, eh?
No.
Just like a classic chef.
A little bit.
So again,
I'm gonna
the
salt,
pepper.
season it,
Yep.
and you can add salt to your taste.
Okay.
You can add no salt.
Right.
You can add a lot of salt.
Yep.
But
Personal preference.
personal preference.
I noticed that your salt is pink.
Himalayan salt.
There you go. So
Yeah.
you're adding another element to your food. So you're using not just regular table salt,
No.
but you're using a really nice pink Himalayan salt.
And it's, it's a nice color.
Absolutely.
It's nice flavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's healthier than the iodized salt.
Agreed. I don't use it personally.
No?
I use whenever I go out east or out west, I get sea salt. And you can go to any fishmonger. Actually, we went to Newfoundland last year, and we ended up at a wonderful fish store right by the ocean, and they had no fish. But my buddy Don said, take a look at this. And it was just a big box full of sea salt. Now you go to the high-end store, they're going to charge you $8 for something like this, and they had them all wrapped up in little baggies for 50 cents. I bought everything.
Awesome.
So now I came home, I smoked some salt, and I understand why use iodized salt
Yep.
when you've got something so much better.
Exactly.
It's all about the ingredients that you put into your food
Yep.
and
Beauty.
beauty.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So here we have fresh cracked peppercorns as well.
Yep.
So that's what we're gonna add.
Nice.
And again, it's to your preference.
Perfect.
If you want more, but if you want more pepper,
Yep.
you add more pepper.
Yep.
Less pepper.
That's what cooking is. It's all
Yeah.
a matter of personal preference, and the meat isn't taking long to brown up at all.
No, not at all.
You know, cast iron, open wood fire, it doesn't get any better than this. In my opinion, this is the epitome. You know, when you go camping and stuff, this is always fun. But when you get the surroundings that you have and living up here, and you get to just go out your front door, build a fire, and cook, it's brilliant. I
Real
love
simple.
it. I love it.
And you don't want your fire to be super hot either, because if it's super crazy hot, then it's just gonna
And you
burn
can't get
yourself.
near the fire to
Yeah.
actually do your cooking. So yeah, a nice controlled flame.
Yeah.
All right, so you're browning the meat nicely.
Yes.
And obviously this is going to need more than wild garlic and meat. So what do you want me to get for you?
The basket of the diced root vegetables, please.
What a beautiful basket.
Ah, thank you.
I love this.
It's for the show.
It is for the show. Look at this, eh? Isn't that nice?
Awesome.
All right.
So I am going to put in some celery here.
All right.
And usually I do these in stages, but today, because you know, it's a little hot out here.
Sure.
We're just gonna add everything. We have beans here, we have parsnips, potatoes, turnips, all of the beautiful root vegetables. And you can add any kind of vegetables you wish.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be these kinds of vegetables.
Right.
Okay, and you cut the vegetables the size that you want as well. It could be like really small, it could be like super chunky.
Yeah.
You know, like I like it chunky.
So essentially the larger the piece of vegetable, the longer you're going to have to cook it.
Yes.
So that it breaks down. If you've got very small pieces, it's going to go very quickly. But if you've got large pieces, you're talking maybe an hour
Yes.
to actually cook this? Right. So extend your time. The larger the piece,
Yeah.
the more time you're going to give it.
Also, the type of meat. If you're using a more tender meat, then it'll be longer to cook. If it's, what did I say? Tender?
If it's
so
tender, less time.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Right. So if you're using the neck or the shoulder
Yeah.
of the animal, then you're going to braise it a whole
Lot
lot
longer.
so that
Yes.
it breaks down all those connective tissues.
My mind was saying that.
That's okay.
but my
I
mouth
am your
was-
speaker because I'm actually reading what you want to say. I'm just
Exactly.
saying it for you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So here we go.
Okay.
We've coated all the juices, we've coated the vegetables with all the juices that were at the bottom.
Right.
So now what
Yep.
we're going to do is we're going to take this mystery liquid,
Right.
or you could just pour it right
Do you want me to pour it in?
Yes, please.
Okay. Including the floaties?
Nope. Go ahead. So what we're pouring here, the mystery, is just black tea.
Oh.
Instead of using, you know, meat, what do you call a beef broth?
Right.
Oops, there
Oh,
we go.
We got a tea bag in.
Yeah, that'll happen. So,
Awesome. We got enough in there?
yeah, I would pour a little bit
A
more.
little bit more?
Yeah.
All right. Watch your hands.
There you go.
Might as well use it all
Yeah,
right.
may as well.
Yep.
There you go.
Perfect.
So yeah, the reason why I use a lot of black tea in my cooking is because it's something that was really close to my grandmother's stove, and it
Right.
was reachable. So you know, like why not, instead of getting like a water that's kind of like out of the way?
Use flavor.
Yeah. Plus, it's flavorful.
Absolutely. If you're going to use water, that's fine.
Yes,
You
it's
can use
fine.
it.
You can use water.
But you know what? If you've got something that's flavorful to add, you know, sometimes you don't
Yeah.
have chicken stock, sometimes you don't have beef stock,
No.
or caribou stock, or beef, or whatever.
Yeah.
Tea,
Why not?
love it.
Yes.
I never even thought of using black tea. Again, another Sezin trick. But you know what? That's why you guys bought the package, you know, is to learn how this wonderful chef makes this stew. And now you know it. Little tricks means a
Also,
lot.
I'm just gonna add a little bit of the vinegar just to give it a little, you know,
Yeah,
add a little bit more flavor.
for sure.
And now the ultimate secret ingredient I add to everything. Yes, I add love, but I also add, you know it,
Maple syrup.
you know it,
Say when.
when. And I find that brings everything together.
A little sweetness. So you got a little vinegar added. So you've got that acidity in there.
Yep.
You've got the sweetness of the maple syrup. You have the earth tones of the meat and the vegetables, and you've got that wicked whack of black tea.
A little bit.
I'm looking forward to trying this.
You're
when it's all said
forgetting
and done.
another ingredient that's going into this without even knowing it. What do you do?
Love.
That, but this is a little test. What else is going in here? What's getting in our eyes?
Oh, smoke, obviously, the smoky flavor.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what's
Absolutely.
going in
It's a
there.
big dynamic.
Yeah.
Anytime that you cook over wood, charcoal, you produce flame. Flame equals smoke. Smoke equals flavor. And that's what I'm all about.
Yeah.
And apparently, you know, people have been doing this a whole lot longer than I have.
Mm-hmm.
And to actually do it, you know, the original way, you know, build a fire, get some root vegetables, go slaughter an animal, butcher it out, and make yourself a really good stew.
I'm listening, but
I know. It's
Smoke.
you know what? I think it's your grandmother just touching you right now, going, "You're using my idea, so I'm going to throw some smoke in your eyes."
especially in your eye.
Absolutely, it's all about love.
Okay, I'm walking out of the frame.
All right. Well, she's walking out of the frame. We're going to let this cook for a whole lot longer. We're going to come back when it finishes cooking and show you what the final dish looks like. Stick around. What a treat we have for you. I love bread. Bread is one of my favorite things on earth, and we're going to do something very special.
Yes.
What are we doing, Susan?
So with this stew, I usually like to dip some bread, a little butter on the bread. And bread that we're gonna make today is bannock.
Bannock.
Yes.
Traditional bread.
It's an adapted culture. This is not a Spanish, it's a Scottish bread that was adapted into our culture.
Oh.
I would just like to clarify that.
No, I'm glad, because this is what it's all about, is learning. When we were
Yes.
in your house, you were teaching me so much, and that's what I love working about the festival, is you get to learn so much.
Yes.
And I'm corrected all the time, and that's a good thing, because ignorance, there's no excuse for it. You can't be ignorant of something, so learn about it.
Yep.
So
Education.
education is key. Is key.
So yes, we've adopted it, and you know, so we made it our own,
Cool.
and it's part of who we are as well now.
Yep.
So bannock,
Right.
I grew up on it.
Yep.
And a lot of it was cooked on open fire along with the stew or
Very
anything
cool.
that was cooked open fire.
Boom.
Yep.
Right there.
Really simple, the simplest bannock that I can do, because I'm really horrible at kneading
Okay.
the bannock, because then it comes out like rock.
Concrete.
Yes, concrete.
Yeah. Very hard.
Yep. So
Yep.
ingredient,
Flour.
easy.
What kind of flour? All-purpose flour?
All-purpose flour.
Okay.
Simple.
Gotcha.
About 4 cups
Wow.
right here.
Okay.
And then right here we have baking powder.
Okay.
It's about a tablespoon and a half,
Okay.
just to show you guys.
Right.
That. Maybe a little bit more.
So
nah, a little bit more.
whatever, nice and fluffy,
Yes, make
You
it
know?
nice and fluffy.
because that's what's going to basically make that bread puff up.
Yes.
Great.
So again,
Pink Himalayan salt.
yes.
Okay.
You can add again to your preference.
Right.
If you like a saltier bread, by all means,
So about a tablespoon.
yes,
Okay.
add more salt or no salt at all.
Gotcha.
Give that a quick stir.
So if somebody's on dietary restrictions, they don't necessarily have to put salt in this bread.
No, you
Perfect.
don't.
Yeah.
But if you want to add flavor,
Pepper.
you can add some pepper.
Gotcha. And while you're doing that,
Yes.
I need to put some butter on this pan so it doesn't stick.
Yes.
So essentially a little paper towel, some
That's all
really
it
good
is.
butter. Now,
Yes.
do you use salted butter or unsalted butter?
I like salted butter.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I would add a lot more, actually.
A lot more?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't
right.
cheap out on me.
No,
Be
no, no,
generous.
no, no, no. This is the learning process. So really goop it
Yeah.
on there.
Goop it on.
Make it thick. Make it show. You know, you
Yeah.
want to see that butter, and
There you go. And it also, the reason why we goop it on is because it gives it such a nice crunch. Like when you get your bannock, when you take it out, especially, oh, it's just
yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely.
So that's what
Textural
we're going.
qualities are very important.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got our pan all lubed up with butter, and of course we're going to need some liquid to that.
Yes.
And
So lukewarm water
Okay,
right here.
right.
And you know what? I don't measure.
It's all about feel.
It's always feel, the
Okay.
look.
Right.
Okay, make a little well. Add your water gradually. Stir as you go. You don't want to go nuts. You don't want to go nuts. You're already nuts enough.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So just kind of gently stir.
Until it comes together.
Yeah, as you can see, we need a little bit more water. Thank
Right.
you for holding it.
You're very welcome. It's teamwork,
Yes,
and
yes.
it's fun.
Oh, yes.
You know, we're outside. We're making bread. Seriously,
Totally,
it's kind
yes.
of cool, eh?
Yep. So here we go. See how the liquid is starting to absorb all the dry?
Right.
This is what we want. We don't want to add too much.
Okay.
And I know some people, they add like fat to this. This is, you know, as simple as I get.
Okay. And if you want to add flavorings to this,
Yeah.
you know, if you want to get all shishi lala, you could probably add chopped chives.
You
And
could.
you can make it yours. But right now we're doing
Simple.
simple
Yeah, very simple, basic.
Gotcha.
And instead of adding water as well, you could even add
black tea.
black tea.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, if you want to go like crazy, you add some fresh herbs to this. You're talking chives.
Yeah.
You can add chopped wild garlic in here, and then add beer instead of water.
Giddy up.
Holy cow!
Giddy up.
Game changer.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Nice.
So here we go.
Right?
This is the texture that we're looking for. See
Okay.
how it's
So
kind of fluffy?
just came together, a little fluffy.
Yeah.
It's not dry anymore, and it's
No.
definitely not wet.
No.
And it's not sticking to the bowl.
Nope. Well, a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
you know, it's dough.
And you don't want to over mix it. This is as much mixing as you want to do.
It'll just get too tough otherwise.
Yes.
Okay.
So right here, let's pour it into this beautiful cast iron that's been beautifully buttered.
Right?
So there you go. You just kind of spread it out
Right?
evenly. And that's it. And if you want to go a little bit more fancier,
Ooh, a
there
little
you
bit
go.
of pepper on top.
More pepper.
Beautiful.
I love pepper. There
right.
you go.
And that's it.
That's it.
So she goes right onto the fire.
She goes right onto the fire.
Now, fire can be a tricky thing. So how are you going to cook this bread without actually burning the bottom? I think that's really important to mention on how you're going to do that.
You're gonna have to move it around a lot.
So you're turning to turning. Now, I also see you're using half indirect and half direct.
Yes.
So you're getting a little bit more heat on one side, and that's why you're turning the pan,
Yes.
is to regulate the amount of fire that touches the bottom of the pan.
That needs a bit more attention than the stew does. The stew, you can leave it now.
Of course, it's a liquid. It's
Yes.
just going to do its thing. But the bread, that needs some love.
Yeah,
Everything needs love, but that really needs special attention.
yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
So, anyways, we're going to finish off doing the bannock. We're going to let that stew roll and do its thing, and we'll be back to check out on some really awesome food.
Miigwech, everyone. So we're here today. We're gonna forge the ingredient that we're going to use for our stew. This is wild garlic, also known as ramps. We're going to use the bulb as well as the green because my recipe, I think calls for kale, but I couldn't find any kale in my local grocery store. So we're gonna use wild garlic leaves. So wild garlic is usually, the season starts at the end of May. And what you wanna do is you wanna pick the ones that have the thicker roots, and you don't pick all of it. You wanna leave some here, like maybe you wanna pick like maybe 50%, 60, depending the amount. Like here, I'm not gonna pick everything because I like to leave a little bit left. And you wanna snap off the bulb and leave the roots in there. So here we go. We're just gonna dig out a bulb. It takes a while. It's, you need patience for it. And you don't wanna just dig everything out. You kinda wanna go one bulb at a time. This one's pretty deep. Oh, there we go. So if you're not afraid of worms or any kind of bugs, you know, she's a beauty. So here we go. This is the wild garlic. Beautiful. So we're just gonna dig out a couple so we can throw it in our stew. There we go, one. So snapping it off, making sure we don't have no roots. One root, it's fine, it happens. Just put it back in there. So here you go. There's some spots that you can find it's easier to pick, like this spot. Actually, the earth is a little harder, so you have to really, really get in there. Sometimes it's super deep. It's not easy. Foraging, it's fun. It connects you with the land, but it's also very satisfying. It's fresh. You know, it's earthy, it's healthy, except nowadays when I eat too much of this stuff, it gives me heartburn, not gonna lie. So sometimes you get, you know, a half bulb. So you wanna go in there and get that half bulb. Darn it. There's a half bulb. Not leaving anything. There you go.
Well, this is really cool.
Awesome.
We've been tending the fires and watching the stew do, or the stew do its thing, but most importantly, I watched you turn that bannock.
Yep.
Turning it and making sure that the heat was even. And what else are you going to do with this thing?
So also we did the foraging of the wild garlic.
That was very cool, but you know what? I had to stay by the fire.
Oh yeah, you had to watch the
I had to
bannock.
watch the fire because it'd be irresponsible to be out in the bush and let your fire go unattended.
Yes, and you did a great job on the bannock.
Well,
Look
thank
at
you very
the
much.
evenness of it. I'm impressed.
Well, you told me what to do and I tried to do it as best as I could.
There we go.
So let's get into it.
Let's check out the stew,
yep.
see how well she did.
Ooh,
Wow.
Look at the color of that.
The beauty.
It's really, really lovely.
Yeah, everything is just amazing.
So are we ready for a bowl?
I think so.
Let me get a bowl.
It hooks me up.
I'm hooking. Ladle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Here. Let me get some meat in here.
Oh yeah. Look at the color of that broth.
At this point, if you want, you can add flour to it to thicken it up, or tomato paste, but I like it natural.
Should we get another one for you?
Yes, please.
Because I'm
Come
actually
on.
going to eat all of this.
Yeah. Don't leave me hanging. Wow. Simple.
Very nice.
There you go.
Delish.
No, I won't put that there.
And the bannock?
Yes, I'll get that.
You want me to move that where?
Oh, sure. You
Okay.
actually, I'll grab it because
Yeah.
I have these awesome
Oh, look at
gloves.
you. Oh, cool.
So there we go. You flipped it over
Done.
and over. Done. This is how you test it. Actually, it's hollow.
So just like you would with a bread,
Yeah.
you want that hollow sound.
Yep.
Fabulous.
There you go.
All right,
Let's
so
cut her up.
let's cut her up and see what you do with this.
God, I hope it turned out.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be beautiful.
Just gonna throw that there for a second. Alrighty, so usually we let this cool, but because of TV's sake,
Oh, yeah.
there you go.
Oh,
What do you
look at
think?
that. That's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Lovely.
So, this is what we usually do.
Okay.
Give me some butter,
Got some butter.
a little bit of butter with your bread.
Of course.
There you go.
Fabulous.
Some stew.
Some stew.
If you want to add extra salt.
No, well, we're gonna taste it first to make sure.
Yep. I'm gonna put mine just right here because it's pretty hot.
I gotta try this.
Yep. I'm gonna taste the broth first. I'm adding salt. A little bit more.
That is really, really good. And the nice thing about it is the vegetables aren't mushy,
Nope.
and the meat is tender.
Yes. And it's simple. You just leave everything simmer on its own,
Okay,
and it blends in.
Sorry, but I gotta try the batter
Okay,
too.
go ahead. This is what you do. Oh,
That is ridiculously good. That crunch of the bottom, it's fantastic. I can't wait till all of you make this at home. Sazin, thank you so much for bringing us to your home and sharing some dishes that you've been cooking for years. It's seriously delicious. As a chef, I love the opportunity to learn, and you gave us all that opportunity today.
well, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, some people used the A word. They called it an accident, but it wasn't. An accident implies that no one was at fault. But when someone impaired by alcohol and/or drugs chooses to drive, they're fully responsible for the crash that can result. So please, for the memory of my brother DJ and the thousands of families whose lives have been shattered by impaired drivers, let's drop the A word.
A crash caused by impaired driving is not an accident.
Well, it's time for a cooking segment, and I'm really, really excited about working with you once again. Indigenous Summer Solstice Festival brought us together to celebrate all things culturally inspiring, I should say. Inspiring, not expiring, because I want to live through this dish because I know what your cooking is like. Tell us about what we're making today.
So we are going to be doing a very simple home dinner.
Okay.
I'm doing pan-seared Arctic char, being served with a hollandaise sauce. It's going to be a dill hollandaise sauce.
Right.
A lot of people are afraid of hollandaise sauce, which is why I chose to do it, because it's actually really easy to do, and you can use it on all eggs Benedict,
Everything.
every vegetables.
Absolutely.
And just to show people how easy it is to do.
All right.
And how easy it is to recover if we screw it up.
Yes.
So, because that happens too.
It
and
does.
We can
Sometimes
recover
they
it.
separate, and
Yeah.
you got to bring them back together.
Yeah. So we're doing the pan-seared Arctic char. We're also going to be doing oven roasted potatoes, and we are going to be doing an asparagus. And I chose asparagus because it's spring. Asparagus is fresh. It's a local vegetable.
Right.
And
One of the first little beautiful green things to pop out of the ground.
yeah, and it goes really well with fish. And it's one of those things that you serve with holiday sauce.
Absolutely.
Also. So.
All right. So let's dive into it. What
All
do
right,
we need?
so I'm going to just list off the ingredients.
Okay.
First for the Arctic char, we'll go through and we'll do the ingredients for the Arctic char, and then we'll do it for the other dishes as we get to them. So for the Arctic char, all I'm going to be using is a little bit of oil, a little bit of butter, salt and pepper, and that's going to be it. We're going to pan sear it.
Okay.
I don't like my fish well cooked.
No.
I know a lot of people like it more well cooked, but I like it more of the medium rare.
Correct.
This is Arctic char from Nunavut, and it is a nice filet. It's deboned and stuff like that. I have fished for Arctic char when I've been up there. It's a nice fish. It's similar to a salmon. So if people are at home and they don't have Arctic char, they can do the exact same thing with salmon or trout.
Perfect.
The hollandaise sauce goes nice with the red fish, and so all I'm going to do is, depending on the size of your pan or what size of portions you want to make, you're just going to cut it to whichever way.
With your ulu, of course.
With my ulu, which is a traditional Inuit woman's knife.
Right.
Yeah. So, but
Now, when you say a woman's knife,
traditionally Inuit woman's knife.
I love ulus.
Yeah.
So if I'm actually cooking, and I did purchase a couple of ulus, would I be frowned upon by using something that's considered a woman's tool?
No.
No.
No. Not if, I mean, if
Because
you're not
there's
using,
a great big Alaskans as well.
yeah. They're different from different regions, different shapes, different sizes,
Okay.
different used for different things.
Okay.
We also have small ones for sewing and stuff like that. And
Right.
These ones will be used for cleaning all the fat off of seals.
Well, I
and stuff
use the
like
big
that.
Alaskan to cut through the ribs.
Yeah.
I think it works really,
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
And
You know, it's sometimes when there's ceremonies and stuff like that going on, opening of new buildings and stuff like that, they use an ulu to cut the ribbon.
right.
At that point, a man should not do it.
Ah,
It is a woman who should be cutting
Really?
because it is a woman's knife. It's not. For,
gotcha.
I mean, that's my understanding.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so,
cool.
but
I just
traditionally-
want to I want to get it from the source because I don't want to be wrong when I'm talking to somebody. So the best way of actually getting rid of all that is to talk to somebody who's actually impacted by.
Well, there's
dairy.
also a man's knife, right?
Right.
And the man's knife is a long one, but it would be used for cutting the snow, the big snow cubes for making igloos. So there's a man's knife and there's a traditional Inuit woman's knife.
Cool.
And when they're first made, like let's say there's a young boy making his first one, or like an adult male or something like that, he generally would gift it to his grandmother, his mother, or his wife,
Oh, that's cool.
or somebody in the community
That's
that
cool.
did something for him.
So you could have ulus out there that are literally hundreds of years old.
Oh, absolutely, and people don't just own one.
Wow.
Like I probably have 7.
Well, it's like a chef
And
with
that's
their
nothing-
knives.
yeah,
You don't just have
pretty
one
much.
knife because a lot of
Yeah.
them are purpose built.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this one I got from an elder in Iqaluit, Mo Lewis, who I've known for years and years and years,
Okay.
and he's one of the most well-known ulu makers.
And I also noticed there's bone on it as well.
This,
Or
yeah,
antler or something?
this is caribou antler, and this
Cool.
it's much darker than because
That's
it's
because you've used it.
well that, and there's iron from seal because I use this ulu to butcher seal.
Oh, cool.
So it changed the whole handle, changed the blade a little bit.
Nice.
And ulu is only sharp on one side.
Right.
Right. So it's not on both sides, and it's on like a regular knife.
Right.
A knife is sharp on both sides.
Correct.
Right. So I don't use an ulu a lot. I use it for certain things, but for other things, I'm more used to a knife because again, I didn't grow up in the north. You know, left when I was 7 years old, so I
Right.
wasn't using this as a lifelong tool.
Right.
There's people who this exclusively
It's
use
an
ulu.
extension of their hand.
That's all they use.
Right.
So you're just going to determine, like I would say, this is going to be enough fish for 4 people here.
Okay.
Right? You're going to get 4 to 6 ounces each. So you're just going to, and an ulu is a rocker, and very sharp. So you cut, and this fish also has a skin on. Sometimes if you're going to a store and stuff like that, if you're buying other kinds of fish or Arctic char, you can have it with the skin off. I love the skin.
Yep.
So if I'm buying fish, I'm buying it with skin on. We're
Correct.
actually probably going to get probably 5 pieces out of this. Do you want to try and cut it?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
And this char is a little bit frozen. It's much easier to cut through when it's frozen, or if you have a sharp knife, a knife will go through it anyway. Yeah, so instead of instead of sawing, yeah.
You want to do this.
Yes,
So I'm used to doing this.
yes. I find myself doing the same thing at times.
It's very cool.
So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So these are 5 pullets, for a family of 4 or 5.
Right? or one very hungry
Or
stuff.
one very hungry.
Yep.
And the nice thing too about fish is if you don't end up using it all at dinner, you can make it into like
Everything.
a fish spread or something for a sandwich the
Absolutely.
next day, right?
Yep.
So I'm not going to put, this is my ulu holder, it's a caribou antler, but my ulu's now got fish, so I'm not going to put it down, I'm going to put it to the side.
Right.
Some people might choose to flour this or not.
Okay.
I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have, I just don't want it to have a crust. I want it to just be the fish.
Okay.
So
Now, what is going to be your frying medium? Are you using butter or are you using oil?
I'm going to do, oh, sorry, I'm talking to you backwards here.
That's okay.
That. I'm going to do it with oil.
Okay.
No, I'm going to add butter too.
Okay. I'll do that.
If you just use butter, it's going to burn.
Right.
So I always balance it with a little bit of
A
oil.
nice little 50-50 mix.
Yeah, well, a bit more butter than oil because
Okay.
I love butter.
Same here.
Who doesn't?
Right.
And you do want enough that the fish is not going to stick to the pan.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that's probably about 3 or 4 maybe
Yeah.
about 2 tablespoons of oil.
Sure.
You want it so that it's coating everywhere. It's going to be, you don't want the fish swimming in it, but you also don't want the fish.
You definitely
not-
want a barrier between the steel and the fish.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to,
A healthy nug of butter.
yeah. And a lot of recipes call for unsalted butter, but then you're putting salt on things.
Okay.
I always use salted butter unless it's for baking. That's
Right.
a little more finicky.
Right.
So I always use salted butter and use less salt for seasoning after if you need to be. You want this to get a little bit, you want the butter to melt, you want the fish to have, or the oil and the butter to have a bit of heat to it, not burning, but
Would you season the fish before
Yes.
it goes in the pan?
yeah, a little bit.
So a little bit of salt, a little
Yeah.
bit of pepper?
And not a long time before, especially with the salt, because if you put salt on
break
too
down.
soon, it'll break down. It's going to bleed the fish, right? Take out all the moisture.
Right.
And here I'm just adjusting the size of the
The
pepper.
grind?
Yeah. Because the bigger the grind, the bigger piece can get stuck in your tooth.
Mm-hmm.
And I like pepper, but I don't like crunching on the big peppercorns.
Okay. See, I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah.
After a salad and I find something that I find is a little nasty, and then I crunch on it, and it's a nice big
Yeah.
burst of pepper. Oh,
No, not for me.
okay.
And also means that you can, down low, you're going to get it concentrated.
Right.
Up high, it's going to spread a little further.
Right.
And salt is one of those things, it's personal taste.
And it's always nice to use a natural sea salt also.
Yes.
I noticed that that we're using a natural large coarse sea salt in grinding it down.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Fresh salt and fresh pepper, always nicer when it's ground yourself.
Right.
Like instead of buying the iodized stuff or the crushed, so that's already crushed, because it's much fresher.
So the pan is nice and warm.
Yeah.
The butter's melted.
You can see it bubbling.
Right.
You want it to bubble maybe a bit more. You
Get
want
rid
it,
of all that liquid.
yeah, because the other thing too is with the oil, if it's not hot enough, your fish is going to stick to the pan.
Correct.
So you want it to be hot so that it doesn't
Yep.
stick. And you know, we can probably get 3 pieces in here, but then we're kind of overcrowding it.
Yeah, we don't
So I'm
want
just
that.
going to do 1 piece just to
Absolutely.
show, bring it through.
Right.
And like I said, I would like my fish to be about medium rare, so I'm going to suggest 4 to 6 minutes on each side.
Right.
It is a bit frozen,
Yep.
so it's going to not cook really fast.
Right. Beautiful.
So you have that little, you can hear that. So, and I always test with the tip of my fish.
Right.
And if it doesn't have a sizzle, I wait. So it has a sizzle, now I'm going to put it down.
Nice sound.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I can
Nice
rinse
little
my hand.
bubble, nice little light little bubbling. So,
Yeah, and that's happening, so that's 4 to 6 minutes on either side.
Right.
So while that's happening, we could be moving on and working on what's next, right?
Right.
So I'm going to actually put that rest of this fish just off to the side
I'll take that
here.
for you.
Okay. I need a cloth.
All right, so while the fish is going, I turned on your water for your steam.
Okay, super.
And what would you like to work on
I think
next?
we're going to do the potatoes next.
Gonna do the
Yeah,
potatoes?
because they're going to take a little bit of time also.
All right. So we've got some potatoes here that
Yeah.
I found for you.
So these have been microwaved
Okay.
about 7 minutes,
About
so
that.
that they're par cooked.
They're cooked.
So with the oven roasted potatoes, we're going to be making them also in a fry pan.
Okay.
I'm actually called them oven roasted, but they're actually pan roasted.
Right.
Because
Well,
we
you
can do both
could do
ways.
them either way.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you could actually start them off in the pan, finish them in your oven.
Yeah.
Or for us, we expedited everything by just actually parboiling the potatoes beforehand, and away we go. So
Yeah.
do we want to season the potatoes before they go in the pan,
No,
or just put them right in?
I'm just going to do it like that again.
Heat up the
So
pan.
now you did it. Okay.
There you go.
All these new.
I know, eh? The modern marvels. I'm used to just putting a piece of wood in the oven and heating it up, and that seems to be okay with me, but
So again, oil. The oil is so that the butter doesn't burn.
Right.
We don't need that anymore.
Thank you.
Keep an eye on your fish at the same time. I mean, depending on the thickness of the fish, it might cook a little faster.
Right.
But you can also see on the edges like where it's cooking, and that's, yeah, it's going to need about another 2 minutes there. So maybe I put in a bit too much
that's
oil.
okay. No, you can't go wrong with butter. It's potatoes.
I know, it's butter.
It'll soak it all in. And what are we going to be putting in with the butter? With the potatoes as well?
So with the potatoes, well, we're going to get them in. What I'm going to do is we'll put them in there, and I'll get you to kind of keep an eye on them. We'll switch sides,
Okay.
and you're going to move them around a bit for me.
For sure.
And while those are browning, I'm just going to make like a little herb mixture. We're going to use some dill, some thyme, some cilantro, garlic, salt, pepper, and smoked paprika.
Lovely.
And we're just going to toss it on the
All right.
potatoes once they're browned.
Let's switch now. You can start on your herbs.
And that fish.
You want me to flip it?
I think, yeah, you want another fork?
No, I'm
Yeah,
good.
maybe we'll flip it and just see how it's looking.
It's still sticking a little bit. We'll just be a little bit gentle with it. There we go.
Nice. Okay. Yep.
Beautiful.
So with your garlic, I'm using fresh garlic. Cut off the end, that brown end, the kind of the root end, I guess.
Right.
And then you just
Give it a
that,
crush.
and the peel comes right off, and you're left just with the garlic bulb itself.
Perfect.
And so for these, for the potatoes, I'm now just going to, I'm not going to find it, I'm just going to dice them like minced almost,
Okay.
because I want to taste that little bit of roasted garlic with the potatoes. So just a quick mince. You could mulch them, you can use whole cloves.
Right.
The more you break them up, the stronger the garlic taste is.
I think you're going to have enough residual heat in that pan to finish cooking up the fish.
Okay.
So we're going to take that
So
out.
that's probably ready for the potatoes.
We'll throw some potatoes in. Oh, get a little splatter.
So I have the garlic ready. I have fresh dill here. You could take off a few, just the sprigs. You don't want the thick, heavy stalks.
Right.
So just a few sprigs. And you're just going to just chop them up a little bit. Dill to me, it's just so nice to go with fish. So it helps transition from the fish to it unifies the dish a little bit.
Right.
So we're going to have dill on the potatoes. We're not going to have any dill on the fish itself, but we're going to put dill in the hollandaise sauce.
Okay.
So then we have the garlic, we have the dill, we have this is cilantro. Some people don't like cilantro. It tastes like
You either
salt.
hate it or you love it.
Yeah.
My dad hates it. I love it.
Yeah, same here.
You know, it's such a big, fresh, beautiful flavor, but as with anything, you're going to have people on either side of the fence.
Well, from what I understand too, is like for some people it tastes like soap.
Soap,
like
big
fish
time.
liquid.
My dad thinks it tastes like soap.
Yeah, and it's
like,
an enzyme.
wow.
Yeah. So if you don't use cilantro, you can use just any parsley.
Right.
Right. So again, I'm not cutting up really fine because I want to have those little bursts of flavor in my mouth.
Okay.
So just like that, chopped up a little bit. And then the other thing I'm having here is thyme. Thyme is one of my favorite herbs.
Right.
And with thyme, you don't cut it. With thyme, you just pick the flowers off.
Right.
And so you just, rub your hand just down like that.
No, I actually take the stems as well, and I use them for little skewers for chicken.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll put 3 or 4 of them together, and I'll make a little hole,
Yeah.
just like you do with your beadwork, with your going through the actual animal skin.
Yeah.
I do the same thing to actually create a hole where I can filter that lovely piece of woody goodness, because a lot of people just throw that out.
Yeah, it's got a lot of flavor.
Or, throw it in stock, do something
Yeah.
with it, use it, because, it's good stuff. You
Yeah.
know, don't throw things out. Reuse them, repurpose
There's
them.
so many things, like everything that you cook with, what we consider it's scrap could be used, like you said, for stocks and all
Correct.
that sort of stuff. And just got to remember to label your bags before you put them in the freezer.
Oh, I'm totally guilty of that.
I am too.
You know, at the end of the year, you look into your magic freezer and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I'm guilty of that too.
What protein is it? What vegetable is it? What color is it? What texture is it? Oh, I know.
So, like I said, with the thyme, I'm not even going to chop it with a knife because like I said, it's one of my favorite herbs.
And they're tiny little leaves too.
Yeah, and
know?
you can bite through that little stalk that the florets
sure.
are growing on.
Yep.
And again, I mean, it's one of those things. This is what I like to do.
Yep.
You might not like thyme. You might want to switch it with something else. Any of the herbs, anything works. So it's cooking is what do you enjoy? What does your family like, right?
Right.
Sorry, I'm hot. That's
I know.
dry.
I know.
So those are.
So we're just going to finish off the potatoes.
Yeah.
And what's the last?
They have the last thing we're going to be doing is the hollandaise sauce with
Hollandaise.
asparagus.
Do you want me to put this closer to you so you can work it closer?
Yeah.
All right.
We're going to, before we get to the asparagus, it's going to be so quick.
Yep.
Oh, we need to blanch. No, you know what? We can blanch the asparagus, or we
Or
can
we could
pan
just put
fry
them
it.
right on top here
That's what I was going to say.
and let them steam them. So
Before
why
we
don't you,
put the herbs on?
why don't you show them how proper asparagus is?
So
There we go.
yeah, a lot of people
Yeah.
put their asparagus down and they chop it. Every stalk of asparagus has a natural breaking point.
There we go.
You just snap it off. This part is woody.
Yeah, it's snap.
Yeah.
That is woody and hard. That goes into the stock pot.
Yeah.
And this, delicious,
And that's it.
tender, Fresh? Oh, that's so good.
So we're going to put these on top of the potatoes before we add the herbs and stuff, because I don't want all of these herbs that are on potatoes onto this.
I just turned off the
it down.
pan.
Okay, good.
And we can just lay them out, and the steam will actually finish off cooking them.
Yeah.
So we're done with that.
Yeah, and the nice thing with asparagus, it's not one of those vegetables that it's because you eat it raw, right? So it's nice that it's not going to be, it's going to be like a very nice al dente.
Right.
Here we are. Oh, there we go.
On.
So the next thing we're going to be working on is the hollandaise sauce for the asparagus. And we're also going to use the hollandaise sauce on the fish, but we're going to use one hollandaise and we're going to make it 2 ways.
Okay.
So first we're just going to make it with the eggs and the lemon. And that's what's going to go on the fish. And then, the eggs and the lemon is going to go on the hollandaise. Then we're going to add a little bit of fresh dill, and that's what's going to go on the fish. So, lemon juice. I have this handy dandy little lemon squeezer here.
Right.
So just to get ready, right, to have it ready for the hollandaise sauce, the flavoring at the end.
So all your mise en place is being done right now.
Yeah. If you don't have a lemon squeezer, you know what?
Just squeeze.
You can just squeeze. The other thing I like to do is I find this.
That's the best because it actually breaks all of that connective tissue in there and all those membranes full of pockets of lemony goodness. I use that all the time too.
Yeah.
Or I like to actually grill it beforehand. That way
Oh, you have a smoky flavor on it.
it's smoky, or not just a smoky flavor, but if I'm just simply grilling it, it's actually warming it up, breaking it down so that when I squeeze it, I get everything
Yeah,
out of it.
you see some people rolling it and then popping it in the microwave for a moment and that sort of
Exactly.
stuff. So with the hollandaise sauce, you're only using the egg yolks.
Okay.
And the measurements that I use, fairly standard, 2 egg yolks, 1/4 cup of butter.
Right,
You want your butter melted.
correct.
So I think we're going to need to pop this in a microwave. So I'm just going to pop this in the microwave real quick there, Steph.
Okay.
Oh. No, I don't. You're going to start off with a cooler bowl. I put the bowl on the pot, but I don't want it hot
Right,
because you don't want to cook your egg yolk or scramble it.
right. All right.
And what are you going to do with the meringue, with the whites? Make a meringue.
Absolutely.
Add it to some other eggs for scrambled eggs at another day. And because I'm going to be doing, because I'm making enough hollandaise sauce for the fish itself and the asparagus, I'm not going to just do 2 egg yolks. I'm going to double it.
Right.
Because normally 2 would probably be enough. I needed one more bowl to put the egg yolk in. Here we go, or the egg.
There we go.
This is not quite big enough. So yeah, I'm doubling this one, so it would be 4 eggs and maybe a 1/2 cup of butter. But
All right.
and as easy as hollandaise is, I still get nervous every time I make it.
Right.
It is just one of those things that it might break. But I'm not as nervous as I used to be because I know how to recover it. So you just want to whisk up your yolks a bit. A whisk would be, if you have a whisk, it's great. If
Let's see
not,
if I can find you a whisk. Whisk, 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 whisk.
no, the
Whisk.
fork is fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm good. So we're doing a double boiler here. Just a little bit of water in the bottom of the pot.
Okay.
We don't want it to be really heavy because the steam is going to be enough to make this hollandaise sauce.
Okay.
And actually, yeah, you know what? A whisk. We're going
Let me
to
find you a whisk.
Just because when we're adding the butter, we want to
Yeah.
have that aeration. And I'm going to grab the butter out of the microwave. It's ready to go. So a lot of people and a lot of chefs, depending on how fine your cuisine is going to be and stuff like that, they use clarified butter. I love butter too much. I'm not taking all that stuff out of the butter.
No.
And we're at home, right? These are homemade meals. So just make sure your egg yolks are... So again, not a lot of steam. I need to do this. So 4 eggs, about a 1/2 cup of butter. That looks pretty good.
Sure.
And you're just going to slowly drizzle in your egg. or sorry, your butter into the egg. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Sometimes you need 4 hands and like be good.
Oh, good.
It would be good to be
That's
an
why
octopus.
you have friends in your kitchen.
Yeah, or have an octopus. Can we turn it towards me? Short little bees, like. So and this and just slowly drizzle
Slowly
in,
emulsify the butter into the fat, or the butter into the eggs.
and it's going to be almost like a lemon custard when you're done. Except
It won't taste like
except
lemon
it's going to be
custard.
butter.
Yeah.
Butter and egg yolk.
Oh, I don't know, lemon custard. You know me and lemons.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I can do a lot more with a hollandaise sauce than I can do with a lemon custard. So
So you just basically want to keep whisking until it actually increases in volume,
Yeah, and
drops in color to a little paler color.
yeah, a
and,
little thicker
Becomes thick.
because it is going to get a bit thicker because your egg yolks are cooking.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to keep whisking that for you,
I'm going to do the potatoes.
and you can actually do the potatoes
Yep.
and maybe start plating everything up.
I'm going to actually, the asparagus itself is going to come right out
Yep.
because the asparagus is ready.
It's ready, it's cooked.
And for all the cooking that I do, Steph, I'm going to, like, George Laurier was nice enough to give us the use of his kitchen
Yes.
at C'est Bon Cooking School.
Yep.
One day, or 1 week, I am going to come here with George Laurier and learn some plating. Because I do, my cooking is home cooking, and a lot of it I cook out for events and things like that.
Right.
But I'm always awed how beautiful chefs make their plates look. I can make it look okay. It's all separate and stuff. I don't have all that fancy stuff.
Yeah. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's exactly.
It tastes the same.
It tastes great.
And
but
my plate looks good, it looks clean,
Yep.
but it's not as pretty as some plates that I see.
I hear you.
But that's why I want to come back here for George.
So your potatoes.
Yeah, so my potatoes, I'm putting them, like, so let's just pretend they were on the heat the whole time and this was all happening, but now they're ready. So now I want to finish them, right? I'm going to actually take this out too because this fish is ready.
Yep.
I'm a skin lover.
Me too.
So I'm actually going to put the skin down. Like, it's been sitting up like this. It's fairly crispy on the edges, but I'm going to put it down because I want to see the hollandaise sauce on that part of the fish.
Okay.
And with it down too, the hollandaise sauce is not really
Nice
going to-
golden color on the fish as
beautiful
well.
fish.
That's really pretty.
And it does feel pretty nice. So now I'm just going to finish off my potatoes. So with the cilantro, the dill, we're going to use a little bit on the potatoes. We're going to use a little bit also in the hollandaise sauce after we put some of the hollandaise on the asparagus. So we're just going to bring this to a really quick heat. We don't want it really hot. I'm going to add,
Oh, all of it.
you think?
Oh yeah. Garlic.
I don't have to kiss you tonight.
Oh yeah. I'm Italian. We love garlic.
Did you put lemon by chance in the
No, I
hollandaise
did
sauce?
not.
Okay. So the
Would
last,
you like that in now?
Yeah, so the last little bit of thing, and this is just to add flavor.
Right.
You can use lemon, and you don't, again, it's how much flavor do you want,
Good.
right?
Yep.
So I would start off with maybe a half a teaspoon, and you can increase it. It's better to put in too little to start with and add it than it is to put in too much and you can't take it out. Needs more lemon. And actually too, a bit of salt if you could. I'm gonna put it all in, because I like lemon.
And you wanted what?
Just
Pepper?
yeah, a little bit of salt for sure. And again, it's what you like. I don't want a lot of pepper because I've already got pepper on other things.
And if you're worried about the little black flecks, use white pepper. You know, I don't mind seeing little black flecks. You know, back when I went to George Brown a gazillion years ago, if you made one of these sauces with black pepper, you may as well go home because that's kind of frowned upon.
Yeah, and I don't even have white pepper. I like the flavor of black. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice. Just that little bit of lemon.
Yummy. So essentially you're warming up your potatoes, you're essentially throwing in a little garlic.
Yeah.
You're gonna warm the garlic up or you're gonna brown
Yeah,
it? or-
I don't want the garlic to end up being burnt. I want it just to be warmed a little bit. The same with all the herbs. I don't want all the herbs to go into the pan and sit there and then
Burn.
brown.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want the heat just to break the essence a little bit.
Perfect.
And if you want your garlic to be browned a bit, that's great.
So be it.
For me, it's a lot of the cooking is what what does the individual like?
Right.
What does their family like, right?
Right.
Maybe they don't like garlic.
For sure.
So we're also going to do a little bit of salt and pepper on this. And potatoes can take a fair amount of salt. Oh, sorry. Not used to having somebody
I
helping me.
know. I know. Trust me. It's when you have somebody in the kitchen that has experienced hands. It's a pleasure, but it's also
It's just so
unnatural. What are you doing? Get out of my kitchen.
So I'm going to say that's enough. The garlic
Sure.
is heated. I'm going to do the thyme first. Thyme is a little bit of a heavier herb.
So what do you want?
So it can take a little bit more time with the heat.
For sure.
And I'm only going to use, I love thyme, so thyme is so good with the other things
Thyme,
like meat.
garlic.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong.
A little bit of dill.
Popping sounds great, eh?
Yeah.
I love it when a pan talks to you. That's when I get excited. It's like, how do you know when to do what? How do you know when to do what? Listen to the pan.
Yeah.
The pan's going to tell you what to do.
So the dill I added on.
Yep.
And again, the reason I'm putting dill on here is I like dill myself. I should have had a glass of water.
Listen.
But the other thing too is like you're tying the dill from the potatoes into the dill hollandaise that's going to happen shortly.
Right.
So cilantro, we can turn this off now.
Okay.
Do this. And we do that, of course.
It's all good.
Yeah, so I'm just going to add, I love the freshness of cilantro.
Me too.
So I'm just going to add that. I don't really want that to get any heat on it. So, and then that's it. And you just kind of pour them onto your plate. See, Steph is being helpful. I'm not used to it. Look at that.
That's gorgeous.
We'll put this down here.
Put that right there.
So now we're going to put, I'll get you a spoon. We're going to put some of the hollandaise, that hollandaise itself, just on the asparagus. And then we're going to add a little bit of dill to it to now do that. And that dill we're going to add onto the fish. And I can eat this like soup.
Me too.
So I want to make sure that I get enough so that every mouthful of the Arctic char that I'm having, I'm going to have a good dollop of.
That looks
Hollandaise sauce.
tasty.
And this is smoked paprika, and it's just pretty. And it can go on everything.
That looks awesome, Trudy. What a fun segment.
It is.
That was a lot of fun. I love cooking with you. I love sharing the kitchen with you, and I love learning from you.
I think we need to taste it, Steph.
Oh, I think
because
we-
it looks good.
We definitely need to taste it, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be tasting this after the cameraman takes some
really?
beauty shots. You got to remember, it's TV.
I keep forgetting.
The guy in the background saying he's talking to me now, going, "Don't touch the dish.
See, I'm not
I
used
need
to
some
this.
beauty shots."
I'm not used to this.
So we'll definitely.
Can we have a potato?
No, we can't touch anything. Have a potato.
All right.
I'm gonna have a potato.
Yes.
Oh.
Hot, but man, I love that dill.
Yeah, it pops.
enough.
Judy, it was fun. Once again, you knocked it out of the park. Really happy to be part of this. And you guys can do this too.
And the nice thing about this is that took us what? Maybe a half hour?
And that's with us doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, but even like if we started from the beginning, it's a dish.
Easily.
You can cook a dinner at home for your family, half hour to 45
Easily.
minutes, and you've got
it's a phenomenal dish.
healthy,
Yeah.
Whole
We're not
foods.
talking chicken fingers here in French fries.
and organic.
Atta girl.
Yeah.
Thanks, chef.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Ottawa's local shops, restaurants, and services are woven into the fabric of our city. We can all help them during these challenging times. Order from them online, purchase gift certificates to use later, order meals for takeout or delivery, send them messages of support on social media. Please do it today. Learn how at ottawa.ca/buylocal.
Abuse, disease, and even death. Unmarked graves have been discovered at several former school sites across the country. It's the truth, and it hurts, according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Of the mistakes, of the evil that we did in the past. But that's what this day of truth and reconciliation, must be.
The Prime Minister attending a ceremony on Parliament Hill last night with survivors also speaking out.
It is my hope that in 100 years from now, our future generations will identify this date as a milestone.
And here's a further opportunity to educate yourself. 7 tonight on City TV, a documentary will air called Runs Through Their Blood, A Life Impacted. It's about the effects of intergenerational trauma through the history of residential schools. Reporting live, Jamie Pulfer, 680 News.
Meanwhile, back in Ottawa, a school in Barrhaven shuts down due to a COVID outbreak. Here's Ottawa's top doctor breaking down where we stand in the fight against the virus.
Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Vera Etches, says there are more cases of COVID-19 within schools this year compared to last year, but overall transmission is limited. With that, the doctor explains she's confident schools will remain open throughout the year.
We're seeing right now, we're holding things steady. What is important is to continue to think about the number of close contacts we had.
Overall, Dr. Etches says Ottawa is holding steady when it comes to people testing positive for the virus, with hospitalizations remaining stable. She is also encouraging residents to keep the number of close contacts low and to continue to wear a mask when necessary. Alex Gouge, City News.
If you think of COVID-19 like a fire, well, that's one way one doctor would describe Alberta's blaze out of control with too few resources dedicated to fighting it. Dr. Alika Lafontaine with the Canadian Medical Association joined members today calling for lockdowns in Alberta, Saskatchewan to protect healthcare systems the association says is crumbling under pressure caused by the fourth wave. Lafontaine says Alberta's health system is engulfed by COVID-19 demands.
If we don't stop the fire, if we don't just try and put it out with the fire hose, but in addition, ensure firefighters are dressed in proper protective gear and we don't dig those trenches around the house to make sure that it doesn't spread further, along with all the other things that you do when you fight a fire, at the end of everything, the health system won't come out unscathed.
The National Medical Association is calling for both provinces to work with the federal government to ensure residents are protected. Here's a look at the market in a minute with Mike Apple.
A little bit of an uptrend on morning markets. The Dow futures higher by 114 points following a last-minute deal to avert a U.S. government shutdown this weekend with a short-term spending plan in place by the U.S. Senate. The overseas markets are mixed. A little downturn for the Frankfurt DAX index this morning. The price for oil is sliding 84 cents at $73.98 on West Texas Intermediate. Natural gas is up 23 cents at $5.71 per million BTU. That's a jump of 4.25%. Gold is up by $6 at $17.28. And our dollar higher by 1/10 of a cent at 78.55. At the Business Center, I'm Mike Uppel.
City News Time 10:03. Today's high today, 15 degrees. Tonight's low, +3, and tomorrow's high, 18 degrees. I'm Deborah Ryder for News Anytime. Follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca. We now turn to a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show on Truth and Reconciliation.
Connecting you and your community. This is the Sam LaPrade Show on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. As Deborah indicated, this is a special show today, marking National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Today, we are opening the show up to hear from Indigenous people. You're going to hear from lots of different people today. Today, although I do a lot of talking on this show, I'm hoping to do the majority today of listening. We're going to start with Saul Mamakwe, MPP for MDP. Hello, Saul. How are you today?
Good morning, Sam. I'm doing well.
Saul, this is a day that, of course, has been recognized September 30th as Orange Shirt Day for a number of years. Today is even more special for us today. Walk me through what today's like for you, Saul.
Today is, certainly a day to reflect of our on the children that never came home, the children that went to school, and also the survivors that are still struggling with the intergenerational trauma that has been, that we have faced, and to honor, to remember, to mourn, to cry, but also to stand up for hope and change.
Beautifully said, Saul. Remind us the area that you represent at the Ontario Legislature.
Yes, I'm in northwestern Ontario. The riding is called Kiiwetinoong, representative of about 68% of the riding is First Nations, and all the way up to the Manitoba border to the Hudson's Bay. So it's the biggest riding in Ontario. 294 square kilometers.
Wow, what an incredible area that you represent. Some beautiful country there, absolutely. So we know that today, as we mentioned, is, of course, National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. We know that the federal government has provided this to be a day off for federal workers and federally regulated sectors. We know that the province of Ontario did not provide that same day of reflection, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, Saul.
I think it's a very big mistake on behalf of the Ontario government that holds the power today, and it was an opportunity to make change for hope, and it would have been an opportunity to be able to, bring people together, and for Ontario, Ontarians don't want to be on the wrong side of history. It's so important that this time now is change, and Premier Ford and Greg Rickford refused to make September today province-wide statutory holiday. This is a mistake, and it's very clear this is how reconciliation gets moved to the back burner by this government. I don't believe this would be a debate if graves were discovered that belonged to stolen non-Indigenous children. This would not be up for debate. This would not be a discussion if that happened.
Mm-hmm. I have to be honest with you. I was very surprised. I mean, from my perspective, and I mean that respectively, I respect, of course, your thoughts, Saul, and I thought it was very tone deaf on behalf of the government.
Yes, and I think that's who they are. That's what the policy approaches towards Indigenous people. That's who they are. They are not our allies. They're not our friends, and they do things that make them look like as if they're doing something without really changing anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about programs, services, funding, whatnot. These programs and services come and go. Governments come and go, but without really talking about the fundamental changes that are needed, such as treaties, such as talking about self-determination, self-governance. We are unable to move forward, but I think this day, again, this is a mistake that they made, and that's how they think about reconciliation is not making it a provincial-wide statutory holiday.
We're speaking with Saul Mamakwa, MPP for Ontario. Saul, you and I have spoken a number of times during this year, specifically around the residential schools and the mass graves, children found and buried there. It's just an atrocity. It's genocide. I mean, it is just something. It's really, really hard to even come to terms with it. We know that there are residential schools in the province of Ontario. What's the responsibility of this Ontario government to ensure that those schools as well have some sort of opportunity to look on the grounds of those schools?
We haven't even begun to start looking at the former Indian residential school sites in Ontario. There's 18 sites, and I think one of the things that needs to happen, it's got to be Indigenous-led, it's got to be survivor-led, First Nation-led, And, people may have different definitions of that, what that means. And I think it's really important that, we admit the error or the past mistakes that was done, the damage that was done to our people. And, admitting it is it's not enough, it's not sufficient, but to correct the damage, the damage that was done, we need an honest, a genuine process to right the wrongs. And I think that's part of it, the work that needs to be done. This is a long process. I would imagine it's going to take about a decade to be able to deal with the genocide that happened. Mm-hmm. Genocide is a big deal. If 20,000 non-Indigenous children died after being stolen forcibly from their parents, from their families, from their communities, we would not be talking about this. We would not be having this debate. And I think for far too long, Canada has denied the truth and refused to accept it. And I think, and this is today that we should be able to reflect. And, there should be events of mourning and reflection and, people coming together. And that's where we are today. And the greatest wounds of wounds for Indigenous people was taking our spirituality.
So let me ask you this. I know I've reached out to you a number of times. I know other media outlets have, and you've in many ways become the voice here in Ontario for many issues regarding Indigenous people. Has it been hard on you, Saul?
I sound like a broken record bringing up the real issues of Indigenous people in Ontario. I bring up the issues of water. I have a community in the Skandiga that has had over 26 years of long-term boil water advisory. And we cannot continue to play jurisdictional ping pong or, continued oppression or, even colonial policies that are there to, when we just ask for basic human rights. Yes, it is hard. It is difficult at times, but I think I get hope and strength from the people, from children, youth, elders that talk to me, that message me, and that send prayers to me. And I think we look for allies, we look for support, we look for people to stand by us, to continue to hope and to continue to hope for change.
I hope you feel that support today, Saul. There's a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier, that have the day off from work today, and the hope, of course, is they reflect. From your perspective, Saul, can you give us some idea of what you're hoping people do today in order to reflect?
I think if there's any events in your towns, your cities, reach out to people. I think a simple thing as wearing orange, sharing with your families, with your friends, with your colleagues on what Indigenous, what Orange Shirt Day means. And I think I don't expect to change things 180 degrees, but I think to change the trajectory of the thinking of the people in Ontario and in Canada about the real history of Canada, the other Canada, of what Indigenous faced. I think, acknowledging that, whether it's reading the 9 to 4 calls to action from the TRC, it's a start. Mm-hmm. And again, it's about trajectory of the thinking, whether it's 7 degrees, 5 degrees. I don't expect 180, but that's change.
Beautifully said. Saul Mamaquay, MPP for Ontario, of course, representing the NDP party. I value your time today, Saul. Thank you.
Miigwech, Sam.
Thank you so much. We'll return with our National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
Sam LaPrat will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporated the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us for our special show recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. My apologies. I wanted to reach out to a woman by the name of Paula Reynolds Hall and have a conversation with her today. Hi, Paula.
Good morning, Clay.
Paula is originally from Newfoundland and is Mi'kmaq, and it's really important to have you on the show today, Paula, because I think you've done an incredible amount of work in terms of bringing attention to today. You're the creator of the hashtag 30 on 30 campaign, of course, an advocate for children, a high school principal, a new mom, and you are also fighting cancer, Paula. I have followed your journey. Thank you again for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Paula, today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and this is a day that has been recognized, as we know, as Orange Shirt Day for a number of years. What does today mean to you, Paula?
So, as you may know, in the calls to action, the 94 calls to action, the 80th call is to create a day to honor those victims of Indian residential schools and those who were able to survive residential schools, but also those many children who didn't make it home, who were murdered or who died but were not, brought back to their families. So I think today, in particular for me, it is a day to honor those who survived residential schools, those who did not survive residential schools, and more importantly, to extend my hope for, the citizens of the country who are non-Indigenous to be able to learn about the experience of Indigenous people and to maybe begin to become allies so that some healing can happen in our communities.
Mm-hmm. And as an educator, Paula, I just thought it was really interesting to reach out to you today because, of course, I know you're on leave right now as a high school principal, but really, as you said, this has been your focus is to ensure, children are aware, and you've been an advocate for children. What are you hoping children spend the day today doing in terms of learning about Indigenous peoples?
I think both as a Mi'kmaq and as an educator, I have a responsibility to put my own needs aside and to ensure that, especially children, those in my care, but all children understand the perspectives of different people. And, I believe in what Elder Albert Marshall has shared. It's a concept in Mi'kmaq called Etowaptamuk, and it's considered two-eye seeing, and it's the Mi'kmaq understanding of the gift of multiple perspectives. And what it means, Sam, is, through one of your eyes, you see Indigenous knowledge, strengths, and traditional ways of knowing. And through your other eye, you see the strengths, perspectives, and worldview of maybe mainstream colonial culture or dominant perspectives. And this happens simultaneously. And I guess my hope is to be able to use the responsibility that I have to help, especially children, begin to see the world through this two-eyed seeing, or Etowaptamuk, so that they can understand other people in relation to themselves. They can honor their own experience, but also that of other people, and, certainly that of the Indigenous experience in our country.
Thank you for sharing, Paula. I didn't know any of that, so thank you for that. And I think that's what today is all about, right? I think today is about, certainly for me, I'm hoping to listen more today than I talk. And we know, Paula, that I like to talk, of course, as a talk show host. Paula, I think also your perspective as a new mom is an interesting one. And we know that you're really in the battle of a lifetime right now, also with cancer and taking that on. What's it been like for you, Paula?
Well, I'm coming up on a year of my original diagnosis with cancer, which is diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, subtype aggressive, stage 4. And I spent the last 11 months, in this incredible fight and journey. And my diagnosis happened 4 weeks after my baby, Bennett, was born. And so I think for anyone who has experienced cancer and who's been through the journey and the treatment, you begin to understand and appreciate things a little differently. And maybe you begin to think, if today's my last day, what is my legacy? What will I leave behind? What will people learn from me, and what will they remember? And certainly, if you're a parent, you can relate to that in terms of your children. If they don't get to know you, if they're not old enough to remember you, what is it that they'll get to know about you and hopefully be proud of? So I think, this year has taught me a lot, and it's given me a really great appreciation of people who have to deal with some critical illness, and certainly, new moms who are, taking care of a baby and going through chemotherapy and trying to keep positive and keep forward looking. And that has partially driven my 30 on 30 campaign to think, what can I do to make a difference? What can I do to use my responsibility that I'm given to make the lives of other people better?
And Paula, what are you hoping we do? Hashtag 30 on 30. What's your goal today?
My goal is probably very much linked to the perspective of former Senator Murray Sinclair, and he was a commissioner in the Truth and Reconciliation process. And he says change one mind. And I guess my goal today isn't necessarily to focus on people on, the extremes of the spectrum of understanding, the Indigenous perspective, whether that be on one side, maybe, more oppressive thinking and non-supportive thinking. And on the other side, the allyship, the people who are already there. I guess my focus is to try to take, as Murray Sinclair says, the reasonable people and arm them with learning and information about the experience of Indigenous people, certainly with a focus on, the experience through residential school and intergenerational trauma, the legacy that's left for Indigenous families and the impact today. Phyllis Webstad, the originator of Orange Shirt Day, she's only 54 years old. This is a very much now issue, and I think today I'm hoping, specifically with the donation of $30 to an Indigenous organization today, which is September 30th, is that after today, when people take off their orange, perhaps, and go back to, work or their life, that those organizations, those grassroots Indigenous organizations, perhaps we'll have a bit more resources to move forward to support Indigenous communities. And I think that's what I'm asking today, is that if you have the means to be able to donate, $30 to an Indigenous organization, that I encourage you to do that, and that, perhaps that carries that organization forward. And for some people, that is a lot of money. However, for others, living in privilege in Canada, that maybe isn't a lot. And my hope is to try to encourage people to make a donation. And if you can't do that, perhaps to read a little bit more of the report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, maybe read some of the 94 calls to action, or perhaps you want to take a look at the 231 calls to justice related to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. There's so much learning you can do, and I think that everyone, no matter who you are, can take a few moments to honor survivors, but also to increase your learning today.
Beautifully said. Paula Reynolds Hall, thank you for sharing your story with us today.
I appreciate it, Sam. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Stay with us, everyone, for our special show recognizing National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
Sam LaPrat will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Ryder. Right now in Ottawa, it's sunny at 12 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 11. Here's what's making news at this hour. Ontario has opted not to make Truth and Reconciliation a provincial statutory holiday, saying it's critical for the province's 2 million children to be in school learning about reconciliation. These actions come as Education Minister Stephen Lecce announced Indigenous content in school curriculums will expand from grades 1 to 3 starting in the fall of 2023. The province says students in later grades are already learning about Indigenous issues, and new curriculum elements for earlier grades are being developed with Indigenous partners, elders, and knowledge holders. Lecce's announcement comes a day before the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in honor of lost children and survivors of residential schools. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Deborah Ryder for News Anytime. Follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca. We now turn to a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show on Truth and Reconciliation.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this special show recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It is my honor to introduce Ashinaba. How are you? How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
It's great to have you here today, and we know that you are an incredible musician. You just played RBC Blues Fest, which was incredible, and I loved all your photos, and you seem to really enjoy that experience.
Yeah, it was an honor to be able to be invited to play there and to share a stage with a lot of really great Canadian artists.
Is it an opportunity for you to share about your Indigenous heritage as well?
Yeah, I was able to share some songs and some stories, from an album I'm working on right now, which does directly kind of talk about, my family history and my history.
And walk me through a little bit of that, because I know that there are some stories from your grandfather that you're hoping to share with all of us.
Yeah. So, I guess to give it some context, at the at the beginning of the pandemic, I'd moved my grandfather into long-term care, and so when I got back from doing that, the pandemic hit Canada, and so there were these outbreaks at these long-term care homes. So to kind of, I was worried there'd be an outbreak there. So, I started calling my grandfather every other day, and we started just, talking about, normal things like the weather and stuff. And I guess that could only go on for so long. And then we started talking about a lot of things that we just never really spoken about before. Some of those things being, his life growing up in Sandy Lake First Nation, being on the trap line with his brothers and his father, and meeting my grandmother, and him being taken when he was 8 and put into residential school, which is where he met my grandmother actually, and his experience there, and the choices he made after leaving that school. And so, there were some stories he had told me before, and I think for me, I realized he was, like, some of the details were getting, missed or forgotten, and so I'd asked him if it would be all right if I started recording these conversations, and at that point, it wasn't. I just wanted to record these somewhere so these stories just didn't disappear. And I guess months into doing that, I was listening back to some of these recordings, and we were talking, in one, I guess the conversation we had that kind of started this album was, we were talking about his father, C.C. Bano, and I'd asked him, what does your father's name mean? What does CC Bano mean? And he didn't know, and it wasn't because he had forgotten or he didn't remember. He just never knew what his own father's name meant, and something about that just really struck me. And I was actually, while I was listening to this interview, I was kind of just noodling on the guitar a little bit, and I kind of just wrote a song there, and it was just this moment where I was like, this is how I could tell, obviously not all our story, but at least a fraction of our story, so it isn't completely forgotten.
Absolutely. I think that's, a really important part of this is sharing those stories. And we're chatting with Aysen-Abbey, an incredible musician here and today for this special show. And you and I have had an opportunity to speak before, and I just really was incredibly impressed about how you have taken your music and you're really trying to turn it into something we can all share and learn from. Today, of course, is a day where we're hoping people learn and reflect. How are you spending today?
I'll actually be. There's an event at Dufferin Grove in Toronto, which I'll be there. We'll be there to kind of pay our respects, and also I'll be playing some music as well, and sharing some music and sharing some stories with a few other Indigenous artists as well, Logan Stats and Jace Martin and a number of others.
And when you get together with other Indigenous musical artists, what's that like, Aysen-Abbey?
Well, I think obviously today will be, definitely a lot heavier than usually is. I suppose, Truth and Reconciliation Day. It's a day to remember what Indigenous people went through, but what they also continue to go through. I think, obviously we'll be talking a lot about residential schools, and they're the center of the spotlight right now, and rightly so. A lot of these truths were, they weren't hidden; they were just ignored. Like Indigenous elders have been talking about, these mass graves for a long time, and their truth is finally being.
Mm-hmm. Such an important day for sure, and I really want to think as well that I'm hoping. Hello? Are you there, Aysen-Abbey?
Yeah, sorry. I seem to have cut out there for a second.
That's okay. I'm hoping today is just, I don't want it to just be about today, right? I think the learning, we pause today, we reflect, but the learning should be 365.
Exactly. I think, at the end of the day, it's these schools, this system, we can't have equality until we have equity. I think at the end of the day, what do these schools teach Indigenous children? They taught them. They didn't teach them how to lead countries or how to run companies. They were taught basic math, basic reading, and if they didn't get that, they were taught hard labor. And basically, they were taught how to follow orders, and then they were put out into the world. Then they weren't taught how to love or how to be human beings, and then they were sent out into the world to raise children like that. And that has long-lasting effects and generational impacts. And so when people are wonder how they can help out, I'd say read a book by Indigenous author, but also buy that book. Listen to music by an Indigenous artist, but also buy that album. Support Indigenous-owned businesses and celebrate Indigenous excellence, because even with all that has happened and, even with all this weight that we have to carry in the race, we're out here doing incredible things. We're out here doing the work. And, that work should be honored.
Honestly, when you said that about reading a book by an Indigenous author, listen to songs by an Indigenous artist, it really struck home for me. I think that is really, really an important part of this story. When the spring happened, of course, we were learning about all of these unmarked graves at residential schools in British Columbia and Saskatchewan. Do you remember when you heard about this, Aysen-Abby, about what has come to light? I mean, you knew about it, of course, from your family, but of course, Canadians, many of us just awoke to the news, and it was a surprise to many of us.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think people were genuinely shocked. But I think my immediate thought was just like for the elders who were talking about this for their entire lives, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be one of these survivors, trying to tell people, trying to tell authorities, anyone that, your peers are in mass graves, that you know about them, you know where they are, and no one believes you. I couldn't imagine what kind of mad world it must have seemed like to try and tell your truth and not be believed. I do remember when the news came out, because I immediately, I was having conversations with my grandfather about residential school, and I think, we talked, and then he talked about his school and that the kids there believes there is a mass grave at their school as well.
Wow.
And obviously all these schools are, they're all being looked at now, and there's funding to go and search these areas out. But yeah, I don't think it's, I believe the number is over 6,000 now, but I think that number is going to continue climbing. I'm not sure exactly how many schools have been searched, but I know it's like only a small fraction of the schools so far.
Mm-hmm. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And, to your point, a lot of those schools have yet to be searched. We spoke a little bit earlier with an MPP, Saul Mamakwe, about the 18 schools here in Ontario that have yet to be searched. So once again, sadly, this story is not over. I have to ask you, you referenced a little bit earlier about learning about your grandfather and, of course, his father and about what his name meant. I have to ask you, Aysen-Abby, what does your name mean?
Aysen-Abby is actually my family name. Aysen-Abby is the westernized version of Anishinaabe. So half my family are Aysen-Abbys and the other half are Anishinaabes, and it means the people.
And when you took that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think growing up, my mom actually had told me when I was younger she had changed my last name because it would be easier in life if I didn't outwardly show that I was OG Cree. And so I guess taking that name back has been an important part of my journey to kind of reconnect with my roots and reconnect with who I am. And I guess that's kind of maybe still similar how other artists choose their name, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. I always learn something from you, and I really appreciate you joining me today on this special show, and I really value your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Aysen-Abby, an incredible musician. Definitely spend some time and find some incredible music that he's created, and to his point, buy his album. Stay with us here for this special show recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
Sam LaPratte will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM. Tim.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and you know, some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about, you know, what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, you know, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the Night Market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great. You know, the community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
Today is all about learning. Today is about reflecting. And I wanted to speak with someone who I have the pleasure of speaking with usually in the month of June. But it's a nice treat to be able to speak with her again today. And that is Trina Mather-Simard. Hi, Trina.
Hello.
Trina is, of course, the incredible founder of the Solstice Indigenous Festival. And Trina, this is a very important day in our country. How are you spending today?
Unfortunately, I'm spending today working, but still trying to make the time with my family to spend some time reflecting and that on the importance of today. But yeah, like probably many Indigenous people, I'm still working today.
Were you hoping to have had the day off, Trina?
I don't know if I would consider it a day off, but you know, I do think it's unfortunate that some of the provinces haven't agreed to honor the day and to make it a holiday beyond the federal, or not a holiday, but a day off beyond the federal. But we have lots of important work underway, and so for us, we needed to push forward.
Absolutely, and you are one of the hardest working people. Honestly, you do some incredible work in this country. Let's talk about the Solstice Indigenous Festival that takes place in June. For those that may not be familiar, give us a bit of a taste.
Absolutely. So we have been running a free Indigenous festival that, of course, was live up till 2019. Growing each year. We really try to be reflective of the diversity of Indigenous cultures across Canada. So having First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, traditional knowledge keepers and artists, and really just kind of creating a space where we can share our culture and where Canadians can come and, learn a little more and just really start to get to know their Indigenous neighbors and gain a greater understanding.
You do such a wonderful job. I've had the pleasure of speaking with chefs that are involved and musical artists, and it really has been a great learning opportunity for me as well. Trina, you have some exciting news coming up.
We certainly do. Part of why we're busy and working along today is we have a big announcement coming out tomorrow on October 1st. And part of it is that we're launching, we've always done this one event in the summer. Of course, Solstice had to go virtual for 2020 and 2021. So we're introducing a new series of smaller events that are a little more COVID protocol friendly. As with Solstice, we were getting 50,000 people when we were live. So this new seasonal series gives kind of a smaller, more intimate group an opportunity to visit what's going to be an Indigenous working farm and support a lot of small Indigenous businesses, farmers and makers and artisans, and meet our new Ojibwe spirit ponies. And so we're really excited. We're launching our first event October 16th. And then there'll be, so that one is our Tawagi, which is autumn. And then we'll have a winter and early spring one as well.
Wow, it's incredible. I thought you were busy before this announcement today. It certainly is going to keep you busy year-round.
It is. We normally get a little bit of, downtime after Solstice, but, we're just so excited by this opportunity and, just continue creating a space to, be able to build up the small Indigenous businesses, but really create a space to, welcome all Canadians to come and learn and support. And
it really is incredible. I know one of the wonderful things that I've seen you do over the last number of years, Trina, is really bring people together. You have lots of different partners you've worked with. Who would you like to sort of highlight today as being a great partner for you?
Well, I think our newest significant partner that's tied to our announcement tomorrow is the National Capital Commission. So I encourage everyone to watch, for that announcement and information. And, we just continue to explore ways to build on our existing partnerships. One of the things that we're doing within the upcoming event and for all of the events is an activity that's supporting the Legacy of Hope. So Legacy of Hope is one of the national, charities and organizations that are educating about the residential schools. And so we have an activity that allows people to engage and kind of leave their thoughts on reconciliation and the path forward and, give some donations if feasible to Legacy of Hope. And they're providing some great public resource information. So, each event we do is a great opportunity to just build on and explore those partnerships and figure out how to connect them into the event and the community.
Trina, I've always been so impressed on how you've brought children into this conversation as well, ensuring that the next generations are familiar with the culture of Indigenous people. You've got very creative, especially from a virtual perspective, different craft kits, etc. Why is that such a focus for you, Trina?
For me, I really just feel, I think, an unfortunate part of all of our, growing up and learning in the school systems in Canada has been, missing some of that key truth to our Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And I think we really have an opportunity with the future generations just to come from a place of greater understanding. And, I think that children are ready for the truth and, can accept it and, I think can build a stronger, country, a stronger Canada going forward with that truth and that knowledge. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's always been really important to, reach the students through Education Day like we do with Summer Solstice, which was, just incredible this year. We had, I think, over 500,000, students and teachers log into our events. And so we continue to try and build that, both with local families that want to, kind of increase their knowledge and support, but also through the school system.
And Trina, when you started this festival a number of years ago, and you've seen it grow, of course, the silver lining is virtually that so many people have been able to connect with it. What's your dream? Have you thought 5 or 10 years in the future?
Oh, things are changing so much. Honestly, I think that, our new endeavor and our new project that we're embarking on this year probably would have been my 5-10 year dream. It, came together quickly for us. And that's really, having a space and a place where we can reconnect our community with the land and, be able to share that land with the community. And I think that's, the best way to share with all of Canada who we are, because it is through that connection to the land.
And for people looking for more information on a number of the initiatives we spoke about today, where should we send them, Trina?
Well, we would send them to our website, and actually tomorrow should be live with a lot of new information that we hope engages people, and that's indigenous-experiences.ca.
Amazing. I really value the opportunity to speak with you today and share about these initiatives. And, you're just somebody in this community that has really opened up the eyes of many, many people. And for that, we're very grateful, Trina.
Well, thank you very much, Miigwech.
Thank you, Trina Mather-Simard from the Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival. She is somebody that is really leading the way in many ways. When we come back, we're going to speak with a comedian, an Indigenous comedian. She's going to share her story with us. We're also going to speak with some youth that have an organization that's very, very important to Indigenous people. A little bit later in the show, we're going to speak with Michelle Good. She's the author of 5 Little Indians. Today, our special show is focused on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Stay with us, everyone.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 30th. Good morning. I'm Deborah Ryder. Right now in Ottawa, mostly sunny skies at 12 degrees. In Smith Falls, it's 11. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It's our moment of truth, a day of reckoning for Canada's treatment of Indigenous peoples, a day to mourn the children in unmarked graves near residential schools while marking this country's first inaugural National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Our City News' Jamie Pulfer has more.
This day is a first in this country with a shameful past that's now fully in the spotlight. A residential school system that saw the forced removal of Indigenous children from their families to attend these schools where so many faced neglect, abuse, disease, and even death. Unmarked graves have been discovered at several former school sites across the country. It's the truth, and it hurts, according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Of the mistakes, of the evil that we did in the past. But that's what this day of truth and reconciliation, must be.
The Prime Minister attending a ceremony on Parliament Hill last night with survivors also speaking out.
It is my hope that in 100 years from now, our future generations will identify this date as a milestone.
And here's a further opportunity to educate yourself. 7 tonight on City TV, a documentary will air called Runs Through Their Blood, A Life Impacted. It's about the effects of intergenerational trauma through the history of residential schools. Reporting live, Jamie Pulfer.
A fourth person is now facing charges in connection with an alleged fraud involving Ontario's COVID-19 relief funding. Ontario's provincial police say 41-year-old Manish Gambhir of Brampton was charged with possession of an identity document and possession of property obtained by crime. OPP spokesman Bill Dixon says the arrest is part of the same investigation that led to the arrests of a former bureaucrat, his wife, and a third man earlier this month. Police have filed criminal charges against Sanjay and Shalini Madham, as well as Vinham Singh, in connection with the alleged scheme. Dixon says the Madham Singhs and Gambhir have no direct connection with one another. Meanwhile, the new president of the Canadian Medical Association wants you to think of COVID-19 like an out-of-control fire, especially if you live in the West. Describing Alberta's blaze as out of control with too few resources dedicated to fighting it. Dr. Alika Lafontaine, who is president-elect of the Canadian Medical Association, joined members today calling for lockdowns in Alberta and Saskatchewan to protect the healthcare systems. The Medical Association says everything is crumbling under pressure caused by the fourth wave. Lafontaine says Alberta's health system is engulfed by COVID-19 demands.
If we don't stop the fire, if we don't just try and put it out with the fire hose, but in addition ensure firefighters are dressed in proper protective gear and we don't dig those trenches around the house to make sure that it doesn't spread further, along with all the other things that you do when you fight a fire, at the end of everything, the health system won't come out unscathed.
The National Medical Association, is also calling for both provinces to work with the federal government to ensure all residents are protected. City News time 11:04. Today's high reaches 15, tonight's low 3, and tomorrow's high 18 degrees. I'm Deborah Ryder for News Anytime. Follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca. We now turn to a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show on Truth and Reconciliation.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam LaPrade. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Deborah mentioned, this is a special show today geared to reflection, geared to learning. And we are recognizing the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We've had a number of guests join us and a number still to come. And first up is Stephanie Pangowish. Hi, Stephanie.
Ani, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm so glad you joined me today. I have been following you. You are awesome.
Aw, Jimmy Gretsch, thank you very much.
Incredible. Stephanie, tell me why it's so important as a comedian, as an Indigenous comedian, that you share your story?
Being an Indigenous person, I've always been taught to be a proud woman, be proud of my language, be proud of who I am, where I come from. And I didn't learn how to share my story until I got older. And when I've seen a lot of the other women in my community on how they are so proud and so intelligent and are really use their culture and how they speak about themselves and how we're moving forward and have a lot of humor. I was like, man, these women are badass. I love them. And that's where I learned that I need to be able to share stories too, to be able to continue with our oral historical, our oral ways of sharing, our historical ways of sharing, through oral history.
Absolutely. And I really value what you bring to the table, because I think this is an opportunity. We need lots of different ways for people to learn. And I think your, the way that you sort of share your stories, it certainly brings attention.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I just realized I said oral quite a bit there in that last little part.
We're gonna move on, Stephanie. Yeah. Keep going, girlfriend. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really one of those opportunities for you to share your story and be heard by, maybe, to be honest with you, I'd love your thoughts actually, by audiences that maybe aren't hearing in other ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Comedy is definitely one way to be able to connect with people from different cultures. Definitely humor. I am so excited when I get to be able to present in front of people from all different kinds of backgrounds, because on so many different levels, we want to be able to understand each other, but how do we talk about it? And so that's what I usually try to consider when I'm creating my comedy for people that are Canadians in general. Mm-hmm. So, and it's great too, because people will come up to me after shows and will ask me more questions. And I do my best to be able to share my resources with them.
I've been asking, and that's great. I really appreciate that. I've been asking all of our guests today, really, how are you spending today?
I've decided that I am going to share a little bit more of my, of what I know. I don't know a lot, but of what I've known, or what I know, to a young group of youth this afternoon. I'm hoping that it'll help spark another generation of keeping our history and culture afloat, not culture, but history afloat in a current context, because in so many ways, our history has been not forgotten, but kind of not told as often as it could be. So with the younger generation coming up, it's definitely important to be able to plant that seed within their mind so that they can continue thinking and seeing how they can support Indigenous reconciliation within our communities.
We're speaking with Stephanie Pangowish, an Indigenous comedian. Stephanie, give us a sense. What will you share with them?
I will definitely share the importance of what Orange Shirt Day is, what it represents, and definitely talk about how important humor is in our culture. I love speaking about our people. I love speaking about how humor is one of our superpowers, and I love to share all the neat things, our worldview, our culture, our history, as much as I can within a short period of time. Mm-hmm. But anything that can help them with understanding who we are and not what has been portrayed about us will be, definitely a goal of mine for this afternoon.
And Stephanie, we know from a lot of comedians, people that have shared their stories, a lot of the humor does come from a place of trauma, a place of, of challenge for comedians. Do you think those stories are the ones that people tend to relate with the most, especially when it comes to your particular story?
Yeah, definitely. There's a reason why I can relate to a lot of Indigenous people across North America. We make lots of jokes about oppression, about what we've experienced. We do have jokes that demonstrate our livelihood, whether it's poverty or, social issues or things that we've experienced from racism or things like that. It's a common theme that we experience in our day-to-day lives. And so it's definitely those traumatic experiences that they're coming out in different elements, I guess, within the community. And we get to make fun of it. And that's why you'll hear some really big anti-laughs whenever you go down to First Nation communities.
And, I think it's really interesting, Stephanie, because so many people are finding different ways to learn. And I think, if you're in a comedy club and maybe someone's not expecting to hear an Indigenous comedian, I would think your goal would be that they take a little bit of that and then maybe learn through an author or through music or through history and really trying to take it to the next level. Am I right about that?
You are right on about that. We say right on, Scorn. That's what we say.
I like it. I like it. Because I think that's, this is a time for all of us to really reflect and learn. And believe me, if I didn't have to do any talking today, I wouldn't. I really want to listen today. And I really want to learn. And I hope Canadians, especially those Canadians that have the day off today, that have an opportunity to really spend a lot of time. And for Canadians that are working today, finding moments we had a musician on a little bit ago and talking about, listen to the music, but buy the album, read the book, but buy the book. Of Indigenous peoples. And to your point, if an Indigenous comedian don't just watch you on YouTube, show up at the comedy club.
Exactly, for sure. Buy those big beaded earrings.
Let's talk about your beading. I'm amazed, first of all. I have to find a way to order a pair from you because they are absolutely gorgeous. How do you do that beading? They seem so tiny to me.
Oh, it's been years of learning and patience.
It's incredible.
I went from not being able to bead anything to learning how to bead with a couple of toddlers around that knocked over all my beads to learning how to bead and get a needle into my finger and continue going without crying anymore. So it's pretty good. But you learn quite quickly on how to, create a color scheme for your things. I usually have these little visions at night right before I go to bed on some ideas of beading projects. And it's like a little flash right before I go to bed. It's amazing. And so I have to get up and draw it, and then I can go back to bed. It happens with comedy, too. It's just awesome.
Does it happen with comedy?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you're just about to fall asleep and you get something in your mind.
Yes, yeah. I always have a notebook or I have my phone near me so I can write what I just thought of. And I'll be laughing to myself in bed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, gosh. People probably look at me, too, when I'm laughing, when I'm driving. And I create a joke by myself in the car.
And then hopefully sharing it with somebody soon. Or a whole audience. Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, it's really been my pleasure today. And thanks for really sharing something very different today. I really wanted to make sure people knew there was lots of different ways to learn and that you were really hoping to educate a lot of people regarding what Indigenous peoples have endured.
Absolutely. And if people in Ottawa are interested, I'll be in town on October 14th for the Gotland show with Yuck Yucks at the Marriott.
Okay, I am literally marking that on my calendar, and I hope this means I get to meet you.
Yes, absolutely. That would be wonderful.
Sounds great. Stephanie
and
Pangawash.
We'll get a coffee.
I would love that. Stephanie Pangawash, Indigenous comedian. Stay with us, everyone, as we continue to learn today on this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Callum.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
Today we're speaking with various people about truth and reconciliation. And it's a joy to bring to the show Gabrielle Fayant from A7G. How are you, Gabrielle?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much for being here. Tell us what A7G stands for, Gabrielle.
For sure. So A7G stands for Assembly of Seven Generations. And we are an Indigenous youth nonprofit, really grassroots organization that operates mainly out of Ottawa. We do all kinds of things, from like land-based programming to language revitalization to peer-to-peer support, supporting mental health crisis, and just supporting Indigenous youth in any way we can.
Gabrielle, how did it all start?
Oh, it actually started in about 2014, so it's not actually a new idea. It's just that it's taken this long for really the public to really understand what we're trying to do and begin to support us. But it started out of Idle No More. It was a really important movement for Indigenous youth, and we were mobilizing a lot during Idle No More, but our voice still wasn't present. So that was what myself and my peers at the time, we really wanted to amplify Indigenous youth voices.
It's so important. And I know that your location, you have food and clothing and different cultural pieces for people to visit you. Walk us through how it works, Gabrielle.
For sure. So on Mondays, we have a marketplace. And so our marketplace, like you said, has traditional foods as well as canned foods and, just necessities that you need just to live a good life. We also have clothes, as well as jewelry like beadwork and some traditional items like that. And the way it works is that youth will come by and trade for different items. And trading for us is very different than going to a store and buying something. So it's not like a tit for tat kind of system. It's really about your intentions, your energy, and sometimes a trade is bigger than what you can offer and vice versa. So it's always like a fluid kind of relationship. It's not just one interaction or transaction, but it's an ongoing relationship and community building.
That sounds beautiful, Gabrielle. Tell me a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Alberta. My family comes from one of the 8 land-based Métis settlements called Fishing Lake Métis Settlement. And like many Indigenous folks, I've had to leave my homeland due to trauma. A lot of it is a legacy of residential schools. Due to displacement and things like that. And so I found myself in Ottawa in traditional Algonquin territory, and I've had to call this my home away from home. And even though I'm able to go back home, I have that privilege. I really love Ottawa, and the host nation, Algonquin folks, have been so great, and the land here is so beautiful. So I also come from several generations of residential school, day school, industrial school, convents, survivors of those institutions. And I'm really thankful that, my relatives survived so I could be here today.
Gabrielle, do they share stories with you?
See, that's the thing is a lot of us didn't know our parents or grandparents or aunties and uncles' stories, because a lot of them were silent for so long. And I don't blame them. The traumas they experience, like, you don't want to talk about the traumas, because it opens up wounds, right? But, thankfully over the years, they've been able to feel more comfortable to share those stories. So they're slowly coming out, and they're pretty brutal, though, when they come out. It's really, really tough to hear some of the stories that my aunties have about those schools, and so it's pretty brutal.
I'm so sorry, Gabrielle. I there's no words, and I'm so sorry that your family has experienced that, and of course, the atrocities over a century more to Indigenous peoples in this country. It's really what today is all about, is reflecting and learning. I'm hoping that people are spending the day, really trying to find information so that they can be more equipped and compassionate moving forward. How are you spending today, Gabrielle?
I'm actually at the Beechwood Cemetery. So A7G has been helping organize some reconciling history tours, as well as Project of Heart tours. We're showing some videos that have been created by the Caring Society. We also have some action tables. So, we're teaching folks about the history. We're correcting the history so that it shows the true history, but we're also asking folks to do some action after they leave. So it's been really nice, actually. There's been a lot of folks that have come by, and it's really great to see more and more Canadians willing to open their minds and willing to listen to the truth of this country.
A little bit later in the show, actually, we're going to be speaking with Nicholas McCarthy from Beechwood Cemetery and Cindy Blackstock, First Nations Child and Family Caring Society of Canada.
Awesome. Yeah, they'll have some more great things to share.
For sure. Gabrielle, I understand that you're looking for new space for your organization.
Yeah. Yeah, so the thing that people don't really realize about A7G, because we have such a cool social media presence, a lot of people think, we got it all figured out and we must have lots of funds. But the reality is we're super grassroots. And so that means we don't have any core funding. None of us have salaries to do the work we do. So we carry very heavy burdens. And with that being said, we also don't really have much access to spaces. We don't really have much access to land either. And it gets really challenging always to find land that we can use and also use in a traditional ways. There's always a little bit of strings attached whenever we find a piece of land or a space. And so we just need a space for ourselves that we can create in a safe way, that we don't have to worry about discrimination or any of those kind of barriers. So that's what we're really looking for a lot of the program that we're doing.
Gabriel, what are the strings attached that you refer to?
Oh, just sometimes when people want to support Indigenous folks, they have an idea of how Indigenous youth should live their lives. And so those are really the strings that come attached with help. But I really want Canadians to know, and folks that want to help, they really have to know that we know how to take care of ourselves. We know what we need, and we need support to do those things, to reclaim our traditional ways, our languages, our support systems, et cetera, et cetera.
A really important conversation today. And who do you work with for A7G? You have a number of other youth you're working with?
Yeah, so we actually hired about 20 youth today that are here at the Beechwood Cemetery, and they're taking control of the conversation. They're navigating the conversation because it is their stories, it is their experiences. So we're really happy that the Caring Society was able to support that. And the youth, it's a tough day, but they feel empowered because they're in control of the story.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, talking about truth and reconciliation and really the part that you play in terms of A7G. We wish you all the best in trying to find land and space that suits your needs, Gabriel.
Thanks so much. Miigwech. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Gabriel Fayette. She's talking today just in a beautiful way about the youth, of course, and in trading and all of the incredible work that her and her team are doing. When we come back, Michelle Good is going to join us. She's an author. She's written a book you may have read called 5 Little Indians. Stay with us here for this very important show.
Sam LaPrat will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, September 30th. Good morning. I'm Deborah Ryder. Right now in Ottawa, it is mostly sunny skies at 13 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 11. Here's what's making news at this hour. If you're just tuning in, Canadians are marking the country's first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, honoring Indigenous survivors and children who disappeared from the residential school system. Singing and drumming are planned at 2:15 p.m. Kamloops, BC time, where the Tecumseh Secwepemc Nation announced in May that ground-penetrating radar had identified 215 unmarked graves at the site of a former school. Since then, numerous Indigenous nations have since reported finding unmarked graves at former residential schools. City News Time, 11:31. I'm Deborah Ryder for News Anytime. Follow us online at ottawa.citynews.ca. We now turn to a special edition of the Sam LaPrade Show on Truth and Reconciliation.
The Sam LaPrade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to our special today on Truth and Reconciliation. It is my pleasure to welcome Michelle Good to the show. Hi, Michelle.
Good morning.
Michelle is an author, and Michelle, you wrote an incredible book called Five Little Indians. Walk me through this book, Michelle.
Well, it's a book that tells the story of 5 residential school survivors, and it focuses not so much on their time in the school, but how their lives unfold after they leave the school and the challenges they face in even trying to establish a very modest life, given the tremendous burden of psychological injury that they carry leaving the school. So their tales are braided and they come in and out of each other's lives over the course of almost 50 years.
Wow,
So
it's incredible.
A big, long story.
For sure. And I think that's a really important point, Michelle, because these are long stories. I mean, they go back many, many years. We know over a century that Indigenous people have been obviously struggling in this country. We know that there are many, many stories to tell. Was this your way of sharing the stories so that people could get to know a little bit about what people had gone through?
Well, it was. And I had been threatening for years to write a book. I hadn't decided, until I started what it was going to look like. But just, from a deep sense of frustration and exasperation, that people just could continue quite innocently to ask, why can't they just get over it? So I wanted to respond to that. I wanted to give people a visceral entree into the lives of survivors and what they had to face once they left those places.
Michelle, have you written anything else prior?
Well, I've been writing my whole life, really. I was, one of those funny little kids that, picked up writing really quickly as a way of communicating and observing and, considering the world. But in terms of publishing a novel, no, this was my first novel. I'd had some really surprising success with a poem that was accepted as was printed or picked up by Best Canadian Poetry in 2016, and then Best of the Best Canadian Poetry in 2017. But I've been writing all my life, but this is the first venture into published fiction for certain.
And this book, of course, released in 2020. The timing of this book was really important for Canadians, Michelle.
Well, and sometimes I feel that the timing of this book was divinely inspired. There are aspects of this book that I changed just at the very last minute to include the repatriation of a child who died of tuberculosis at the school. And that child was, in fact, a real living child. That child was my mother's friend, and my mother watched her hemorrhage to death from tuberculosis in the residential school. And when, the the graves, the unmarked graves in Kamloops were, the information about that was released by the Kamloops band. I was just stunned, actually, by the timing. Not by the fact, because we've known about it forever, but by the timing, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely heartbreaking, and I think, as you're so rightly pointing out, so many people knew about it for forever, and then many Canadians just learned of the atrocities this past May, and I think this is an opportunity for many of us to really learn today. Today is a day of learning, Michelle.
That's my hope. That is my great hope, is that non-Indigenous Canadians will take the opportunity of a day away from work to really begin to accept responsibility for their own education. There are so many resources that are available now with respect to the history of the schools. If you want to, all of the archives are online. You can find basically anything you want to know these days, and it wasn't always that way. And so that's what I hope. I really hope that people will take this chance to really learn to accept the truth, which is a prerequisite of meaningful reconciliation.
We're speaking with Michelle Good, author of 5 Little Indians. Michelle, tell me a little bit about you and your family.
Well, my mother is was a member of the Red Pheasant First Nation in Saskatchewan, and she went to residential school, as I indicated earlier. But she fought. She was a force of nature, this one, and she fought and fought and fought to be able to go to public school, to not have to go to residential school. And she had just won her battle, and the first week of school was discovered to have contracted tuberculosis at the residential school, and subsequently spent 3 years in a TB sanatorium. But long story short, she continued her campaign to get an education, which was illegal at the time for Indigenous people to get an education beyond grade 9. And ultimately, with the aid and support of various organizations, ended up training as a nurse and a midwife in New Zealand.
Wow, what an incredible story, Michelle.
Well, yes, and this at a time when we still had to get passes to leave the reserve.
What year would that have been, Michelle?
This was in the 40s. It was right after the Second World War.
And when did you lose your mom, Michelle?
2000, year 2000, January.
What do you think she would have thought, Michelle, about this award-winning book you've written?
Well, I think that she's very satisfied. I feel that quite strongly, that she feels that her story has been heard, which is, of course, my hope that other survivors, and I hear from survivors from time to time about how they can relate so deeply to the characters in this book, and I think my mom would feel the same way.
And when you were writing the book, did you ever think at any point in time of maybe somebody that would be picking up that book? Who were you writing this book for?
Well, that's such an interesting question, because in some ways I was writing it for me after many years of working in Indigenous communities and many years of working with survivors, and in a way it was deeply cathartic to me. But primarily, I wanted to just put a true story out there, so that perhaps, on one hand, non-Indigenous Canadians would be able to access a deeper understanding of this truth, this horrible, ugly truth, and that Indigenous people and survivors could see themselves and feel that they were heard, feel that their truth is out there. So for a lot of people, I guess.
It's incredible, Michelle, because you've won so many awards, and I mentioned a little bit earlier an award-winning book, and I sense that you're almost amazed at that, and you probably haven't fully accepted that.
Well, I mean, I've accepted it because people keep telling me, but it's very surreal, and it so far exceeds what I thought this little book would do. I thoroughly expected that it would do respectably, but that it would be a niche book for a niche audience, and nothing could be further from the truth, and I couldn't be happier.
So, winner of the Governor General's Literary Award for Fiction, winner of Amazon First Novel Awards, winner of the Kobo Emerging Author Prize, finalist for the Scotiabank Giller Prize, and it goes on and on and on. Walk me through, Michelle, the minute you get that first hard copy in your hand. What's that like?
Well, it's a staged process, right? First of all, you get the galleys, and then you get the advanced reading copy, which isn't as pretty as the ultimate as the ultimate book, and then the final book arrives. And I remember that. I'll never forget that morning. Opening this box, and there are these beautiful, beautiful books, and it's a lifelong dream come true for me. I've always wanted to write, and the fact that I was able to, and the fact that a publisher thought that it was something that needed to get out there, I'm blessed. I'm just as thankful as a person could be.
Now take me to the minute where you're walking through a bookstore and you see it on the shelf. What's that like, Michelle?
Well, there hasn't been too much walking through bookshelves given the pandemic.
That's true.
Bookstores, but my friends and family send me pictures. So, they'll be in a bookstore, they'll take a picture, they'll send it to me, and so I have all this. I should make a little collage of all of these photographs of my book on various bookshelves. It's lovely.
What an honor it is to spend time with you today. Michelle, I'm really hoping that we've inspired people today to do exactly what you and I said a little bit earlier, is really make this day a day of learning. And we hope the learning continues, and maybe they pick up your book, Five Little Indians, and learn more about really the plight of Indigenous people over many, many years.
Well, and if nothing else, I truly hope that people will take a contemplative moment and just have a quiet moment and just think about this and what we continue to struggle with.
Absolutely. Michelle Good, author of Five Little Indians, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
When we come back, we're going to speak with Nicholas McCarthy and Cindy Blackstock here on our special for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Stay with us, everyone.
Sam LaPrade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that. to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the Night Market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great, the community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
FM and 1310 AM.
I'm Sam LaPrade. Today I have listened, today I have learned, and the learning hopefully continues on this National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And it's a pleasure to welcome Nicholas McCarthy and Cindy Blackstock to the show. Hello to you both.
Hello.
Nicholas McCarthy from Beechwood Cemetery and Cindy Blackstock, First Nations Child and Family Caring Society of Canada. Cindy, I understand it's been a very busy day for you today at the Beechwood Cemetery.
It has been. It's been so exciting to see how many Canadians of all diversities are really ready to learn the truth so that they can apply these lessons of what happened in residential schools to address the contemporary injustices.
Absolutely. And Nicholas, why was it so important that Beechwood do this special ceremony that happened this morning?
Well, so it's a full day programming where we're inviting people to walk through our sacred space. And yesterday, alongside Assembly of Seventh Generation, Indigenous Youth Organization, we set up 57,000 tiles representing Indigenous children that went to residential school. And to see that all together in one space, and to think that it's only a third of the Indigenous population that were forced to go to residential school is just astounding. I think people are having a moment of reflection, and I think that's what Beechwood was wanting to do. We have great partners, and I've spoken before about our partners with our connection with Cindy and the First Nation Caring Society, but we've really been able to adapt something that is thought-provoking, but yet allows people that space to reflect.
Mm-hmm. It certainly has been a challenging time, Cindy. I don't need to share that with you. You know all too well. We know that, of course, residential schools, the mass graves, children that were taken from their family, and this has just been a horrific time. On the flip side of that, the government in litigation with Indigenous peoples, has that been difficult, Cindy, to sort of balance in your mind?
Yeah, when you think about the survivors and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, those are the survivors' work plan for the country. And if you look at what the top calls to action are, they're ending the injustices for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children. They told their truths through their tears so their grandchildren didn't have to go through with it. So it's really disappointing to see the federal government continuing to fight legal orders to end discriminatory provision of public services to First Nations children. And yesterday, the federal court, thankfully, rejected 2 federal government of Canada appeals and demanded that they just get to work and actually make this right. And that's the right signal. Now we just need to hope that the Prime Minister and the government don't appeal that decision.
Cindy, have you had an opportunity to speak with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
No. I've sent him correspondence several times, but I've never spoken with him. I've certainly spoken with his government, and I really, if I had a message for him, it would be that this is the moment when you have a chance to make sure that this generation of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children don't have to recover from their childhoods. You could go down in history as that. But you have to stop fighting kids in court, and you have to implement the solutions that are on the books, because these kids are really sacred, and that's what these people walking around Beechwood know. That's why they're here.
Give us a sense of what Beechwood is like today, Nicholas, and what, if somebody was to go to Beechwood today, what would they experience?
If I'm going to be so bold, I think it's incredible. I think we worked really hard yesterday to set it up, but if people come to Beechwood, we still have a bit of room. So if you time it right, we're hosting this until 6:30 tonight, and people are going to be presented an entire program that not only educates but shares the truth, and you get to hear the voices. Some of the A7G First Nations youth sharing their thoughts on reconciliation, what we can do to move forward, right? It's a path that we all have to take together, but the first part, and we have to stress this, the first part is that Canadians from all walks of life have to understand the truth. And the Indigenous population has been telling us the truth since the very beginning, for over, I would say, I'm going to use 7 generations, but since first landing, right? And it's time now that we actually stop and hear it and accept it, and then we can move forward. Because if you don't understand the truth, you're never going to move forward in reconciliation. And I think we're at a turning point in Canadians, or I hope we're at a turning point in Canadian society. And to think that we have a day of the Day of National Truth and Reconciliation would have been unheard of 10 years ago. And today, everyone is stopping, and everyone has their orange shirt. But I think it's more than just the symbolism of the orange shirt. It's the idea that today is the day, tomorrow is when the work actually starts. And if everybody that visits Beechwood today gets to do the work tomorrow, and how can I implement it in my office? How can I implement the TRC in my life? How can I look to support Indigenous causes, Indigenous shops, or even just share the stories that, as we've talked about, right, it wasn't in our history books growing up, and we've talked about that quite a bit, you and I, Sam. So it's one of those things. It's let's move forward, and I think that's what the youth of today, both Indigenous and non, are looking for. They're championing what we need to do next.
Cindy, let me ask you this question: is it frustrating for you and the Indigenous community for it to have taken finding 215 children buried in a mass grave in Kamloops, BC, and thousands more, and we know there's probably thousands more, to be heard?
I think it's yes, but at the same time, there's the question of the opportunity to learn from that. So I'm hoping, as Nick says, that Canadians are now paying closer attention, because the survivors told the truth about the children in the unmarked graves. Some of them buried those children. They were forced to dig their graves. And for far too long, they told the truth, and people called them stories and turned away because thinking that about Canada was too confronting. But herein is the opportunity, is that we don't look away, that we tell the survivors that they're not alone anymore. And more than that we're going to take action to make sure that their work plan for the country, the TRC calls to action, are implemented. And one of the things we have here at Beechwood is an opportunity for people to take action right here on the TRC's calls to action, and we have all 94 of them posted. And so when you're walking through there, if you're a business leader, or if you're a member of a sports team, or if you're a member of a profession, or if you care about education, whatever your interest is, you're going to find one where you can apply your talents and get it done.
Beautifully said, Cindy. Beautifully said. You know, I think today, once again, as I've said many times throughout today's show, I'm hoping today is more about listening and learning than anything else. Cindy, when you think about all of the families that have been affected through all of this for more than a generation, this genocide, how does it weigh on you? You've been the face of so many conversations. You participated so generously with your time with media and other groups. How do you sort of manage all this for yourself, Cindy?
Well, I just personally feel I owe a huge debt to the survivors. I think about what it would have been like to be a child in that school, where everything that reminded you of the people that you loved and the people that you loved were taken away from you on your first day of school, where you were given a number to replace your name, where you were abused and you saw some of the other children die. And I think of the children in those schools who remembered a few words of the language, who remembered some of the values and teachings, even though they knew that that put them at risk for more abuse, because it literally would be beaten out of them. They remembered that, so that people like me have the privilege of working with the young people today to resurface all of those rich traditions. And so I consider each of these opportunities as a small way that I can pay back the debt to those children who sacrificed so much so that we can have First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children who are proud of who they are today. But the injustice is still going on with the Government of Canada, and that's where we all have an opportunity to make it stop. We're the people of this period, so what are we going to do about it? We need to tell every elected official, regardless of party, that these TRC calls to action are important to us. They've got to be your top priority, because the next time we go to the voting booth, it's our top priority.
Beautifully said, Cindy. And this is an opportunity for all of us, to your point, to take action. Nicholas, when you put your head on your pillow tonight, what do you hope the next steps will be in terms of Beechwood and the commitment that you've made today to Indigenous people?
That's really not my place to say, honestly. We're working with different Indigenous allies and Indigenous community leaders to sort of figure out what the next step will always be with Cindy. That's a
Yes. Plaques planned. Let me put it that way.
So we'll definitely be looking at doing more plaques and more ceremonies and more. We've done blanket exercises where you learn about the treaty and colonization through a series of blankets, and I find those very effective for visual. But again, we're on this path with everyone else, and I think Beechwood has committed, and we've always been committed to sort of move forward. And I think a lot of private companies like us and a lot of not-for-profits like us should be doing that, and they should be looking at simple ways. How can you live reconciliation? And we've closed down our building for 3 days. Never been done before. Never, and we've done it because it's important. It's a moment in history.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.